Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for September 23rd. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Kirsten. How you doing, Kirsten?
If you know what, it wouldn't be a JC podcast if there wasn't something totally frantic. So I've been awake approximately 3 minutes, so this is gonna be so good.
Yes, there's what, like three or four live feed updates left. You almost made it.
I almost made it. I could have had perfect attendance, but no, it's not happening today. So I'm sorry, everyone, that we're late. It's my fault. Do not yell at Taran.
Well, we are here to update you on everything that happened on the Big Brother 20 live feeds yesterday, and then we are going to go through the game of JC all season long, week by week. We're going to go through the whole thing. We're going to tell you everything that JC did, which is actually quite a lot.
It's a lot of stuff, even from his perspective and from the real perspective. There's so much.
Yeah, a very, very active player. So this should be an interesting podcast. So just to start you off here, to update you on what happened yesterday, in terms of, interaction, not much. JC talked some more at Tyler. Tyler listened some more at JC. And then they did part 2 of the final 3 HOH.
Yeah, and it's like, it was a lot of hours of just waiting beforehand. But then part 2 is over. And to everyone's surprise, Kaycee won another competition.
Has won part 2 of the final 3 HOH. It was actually apparently very close, less than 40 seconds difference between JC and Kaycee in part 2 of the final 3 HOH. It was a rock climbing kind of thing. There were also questions. JC got a lot more of the questions correct, but Kaycee was a lot faster than him on the wall. So unfortunately for JC, he ended up losing that competition and probably losing the game. However, we're still going to go over his game and figure out what he did right, what he did wrong, and all of that stuff.
Well, it's the final 3, and we have to talk about all 3 of them. So everyone get ready, because we're going to talk about JC, okay?
Yes. And JC was, of course, upset about losing. He was upset that, 2 physical competitions in a row. What is that? That's nonsense. And he feels like, he's very upset with himself. He wanted to go to the end with Tyler. And he's worried that Kaycee's going to get there and so on and so forth. He's still trying, though, going to Kaycee like, you think you can beat him, right? Like, you're going to take me and you're going to be. And then he's going to Tyler and he's like, oh, we can't beat Kaycee. You're still going to day one, man. We've been working together for so long. We got to make it to the end. We're going to have an apartment together. It's going to be great. He's really trying.
Yeah, and I know at one point yesterday, Tyler was literally just sitting alone on the couch and he had just the craziest look in his eyes and he was like, day one. And I was like, this could actually apply to both of the other 2. I'm going to need more information, Tyler. It's like the closest he's been to talking to the cameras all season.
Yeah. He did. There was a great moment after the feeds came back where, they were all in the kitchen just kind of hanging out. For a while, people didn't know who won because everyone was looking somber. And JC goes to the bathroom and Tyler and Kaycee just kind of like peek their head around the corner because Kaycee was sitting on the stairs and they're just like, finally like silently celebrating, and then JC, they hear the toilet flush and they go back to like being somber and JC walks back out.
Yeah, which is like, I feel like they don't have to be all so sad. Like literally every person at least feels somewhat like they're gonna go to the end even with this. Like JC's still trying to get people to bring him. Like they can act like a normal level of happy, but they're just so sick of being in that house that I feel like it's hard for them. Like they were even, was it yesterday or the day before when they were like, okay, but do you think finale is going to be on Sunday? Do you think that we get to go home?
A lot of speculation. They're really hoping that the finale is going to be today. Hopefully it's today. Maybe it'll be Tuesday. Tyler keeps going like, think it's gonna be Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, they're just like, what are we gonna do? It's all like, we're just gonna sit here for another 3 days. This is the same people, the same conversations. What are we doing in this house?
And that's actually the same conversation that we are going to be having outside of the house. Oh, we still have to keep watching. Like, I know people have been discussing, maybe they shouldn't do the sped up end game like this, but like, how many days do we want to watch feeds of 3 people in a house? Like, it's cruel and unusual punishment for all of us.
Sped up endgame is absolutely necessary. Not the live jury stuff, but yes, the sped up endgame.
Yeah, like it's too much.
All right, so that's basically what happened on the live feeds. Kaycee and Tyler will be headed to part 3 of the final 3 HOH on Wednesday night for the finale, despite what they may hope or think.
They're gonna be so sad today that it's not happening.
And I do completely expect that Tyler and Kaycee will be taking each other, which means JC is left out on his own here. All of this game talk we will be doing today may be for naught, but
no, it is for them. It's for the listeners, okay? It's just not about the game.
I will tell you, Brent said he would be willing to do JC, but not if he lost the final 3. Part 2.
Well, you're so lucky to have me then.
All right, so here we go. Let's start talking about JC's Big Brother 2020 game. If you're not interested in JC, feel free to just stop the podcast here. Yeah, you don't have to tweet me being like, "Oh, I don't care about JC." That's fine. You don't have to tell me. You can just not listen.
Have you been having a good week, Taran?
It's just so annoying. Like, hey guys, I'm going to be talking about JC. I don't care. Okay, well, you cared enough to tweet at me about it. All right.
Okay.
So here we go. Let's talk about JC. So JC comes into the house week 1. Obviously, very nobody really thinks he's going to do a particularly good job here. I mean, I didn't see anybody talking about JC like he was going to do well in this game.
The only person I know who is really excited about JC was Ryan from BB Can 6, and I don't think it was gameplay reasons that he was excited about him. So yeah, I don't think. Nobody saw him having any sort of game acumen at all.
Yes. However, he comes into the house and I think surprises a lot of people. The feeds were down for the first week, so there was a lot of stuff that we didn't see. But of course, the main thing that we did see, or that we know that happened, is that he forms a bond with Tyler in the first week, which unfortunately for him, he's not the only one who does that. Yeah. But he forms a bond with Tyler. He ends up making some kind of final 2 with him. And Tyler at the time, of course, is the HOH. So, this is he's forming this bond with Tyler, and he's coming up with his strategy, his plan for the entire game at this in week 1.
Yes, and it's honestly, it's so sad that he's like, what was he, the second one to have the final 2 with Tyler? Do you think it was like...
Yes, I believe he was the second person to form a final 2 with Tyler.
And there was the one thing that came up a lot that I was surprised about going back, because obviously 100-day season is a long time to go back over everything, is how much it was brought up that JC was definitely going to get a power up, or definitely like people thought he was going to get a power up, and then he just didn't.
Yeah, he seemed like a shoo-in, and he himself thought he was going to get a power up as well. Yeah,
he was shook. Honestly.
Yeah, so he forms his final 2 with Tyler. His plan with Tyler is to, he's sort of recognizing that there's 2 sides of the house that are forming. JC is one of the few people that is able to see that level 6 is coming together as a group and that they are working together. Of course, he doesn't know that they're called level 6. However, he does. He sees that side. He sees the Faute side kind of forming together. His plan with Tyler is that they want to play the sides off of each other, hiding their bond and making it to the end together like the Renegades, like the Hitmen. These are two guys. They're going to be playing the house the whole time, and even as far back as week 1, week 2, we were talking about, or at least I was talking about, like, wow, wouldn't it be crazy if these two actually were working together the entire time playing the house? Like, what a dynamic duo here. This could be very interesting.
Well, and I feel like that's kind of the story of JC's game too. Is it could be very interesting, but it just doesn't quite get there.
So week 1, many people do suspect that he has the first power up. He is going to be one of the main suspects for having a power up for the entirety of. Even yesterday on the live feeds, Kaycee went, I think JC had that second power up. No. So that's a thing. JC at first, he was one of the first people to make an accusation, and we didn't know who had the power up yet at this time. So we were like, oh, JC knows. And then he eventually was like, I know who it is. Brett has the power up, and we're like, oh, he does not know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm the only one who knows. I know everything, and that's also just a common thread of JC going through acting like he is all-knowing when literally everything around him is proving that he's certainly not.
Well, he wanted Steve gone this week. He between Steve and Sam, he was one of the few people that wanted Steve gone without even knowing what Sam was doing. Again, he really he wanted to have this kind of middle group, and I think he saw Steve as an obstacle to that plan, because Steve was somebody that was also trying to play the middle, but wasn't with JC. JC had a little bit of a bond with Sam, and really what JC wanted at this time, JC had a decent bond with Haleigh as well, and so did Tyler. Tyler and Haleigh were cuddling up a bit, and JC was telling Haleigh, or telling Tyler, like, hey, you got to flirt with Haleigh more. You got to get her on board. We got to get her vote to keep Steve, or to get rid of Steve this week. And he's really trying to foster this bond between Tyler and Haleigh. And I think at this point he wants to bring Haleigh in and form this kind of middle group with Haleigh. Obviously, he's going to be unsuccessful in reeling Haleigh in, but and that's kind of the story of JC's game, where like he has a billion plans and they're all about half successful. So he's got Tyler, but Haleigh, of course, is going to sort of be going more in the Fessy Faute direction.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to think of what would have happened if this had worked out instead of the Kaitlyn flip in week 1. Like, I wonder what would have happened, which is kind of how I was going through all of this. I was like, what would have happened if this had worked? What would have happened if this had worked?
If Haleigh had gone with Tyler, I feel like I still feel like Haleigh had the potential to do well in this game. If she had gone with good players and learned like the game with them, I feel like she could have been a dangerous force in this house. But instead, she chose Fessy.
Yeah, oh, right, Fessy.
Fessy and Rockstar.
Oh, you know what? I don't know why you would even say that. Fessy and Rockstar are clearly just amazing players. The other thing too in week 1 is he kind of fed a lot into the Swaggy versus Tyler conflict by, pushing, Swaggy thinks he's running this house. He's just trying to use you. He's not really with you. And I do think that probably had a bit of an impact in how things went later on.
Yes, he was never too big on the Swaggy of it all. Swaggy, I feel like Swaggy was somebody who was acting like, hey, I'm in charge of the house, and I feel like JC was like, no. No, you're not.
Like, I'm in charge of this house. Okay, Swaggy.
Yeah, I'm in charge of this house. So he was never really well, and also part of it was that again he wanted Steve gone, and so he was working on Haleigh for a long time, thinking he could maybe get Haleigh. It started to become clear that he wasn't going to get Haleigh. He quickly becomes aware that she is a bit closer to Fessy than he would like, and so he might not be able to get that to happen, and he might not be able to make the Tyler and her connection happen. So he actually starts working on Fessy and Swaggy, trying to get their votes. Maybe he can win one of them over. Swaggy clearly has too much of his own mind. He is unsuccessful with Swaggy, but again, he's half successful at basically everything he does, and he actually makes some headway with Fessy. And so because Fessy is reacting well to his attempts at this campaigning, he keeps in communication with him. Okay, Fessy, like you may not be voting with me, but like we've got something here. And so this is kind of the start of the JC Fessy bond here.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange to think too. In week 1, he's trying to kind of push Tyler to work with a woman, and then by the end of the season, he is desperately trying to keep Tyler away from a woman. So there's another switch in the game.
Yeah. So by the end of the week, he does end up giving Fessy a heads up that he is going to be voting Steve out prior to the eviction, which is going to be important because he is going to be one of the swing votes here. Nobody really knew where he was going to go. They thought maybe he'd vote out Sam, but he ultimately tells Fessy beforehand, hey, Steve he's been giving me some weird looks, and like just personally for my game, I want to vote him out. I don't like him. JC is going to continue to play up this lone wolf sort of free agent wild card thing. Is that I vote for my game, I vote my conscience, and for me, I have to vote Steve out this week. And he gives Fessy that heads up. So then we see it happen. Steve is evicted by a vote of 7-6 after Tyler flips Kaitlyn at the last minute. JC was not very involved in that plan. However, he obviously was one of the key votes there to keep Sam in the game.
Yes, and then he is able to start the season of doing very good work on Thursday night when Fessy is just losing it, wondering what happened.
Yes.
Like he's always in the room with Fessy when Fessy's like, but who flipped? What happened? And so that started off strong week 1.
Yes, it really did. So one thing to keep track of as we go along here, this season we had ratings every single week, and so we can track how we rated JC's game week by week here. And in the first week of the game, JC's average rating between the audience and the LFC was 5 out of 10. That I think he surprised some people that he was doing better than many people thought he would going in. But I, in particular, was very low on him. I gave him a 3 because I felt like despite what I was seeing in the house, that he was a lot better off than I thought. I was worried about him, having genuine bonds with people because he seemed to only be close with Tyler and nobody else at the moment. He was very much a free agent. I was worried about his end game chances. How is he ever going to win the game? Those two things combined, I was like, I just feel like he's not long for the game. My opinion on JC would, of course, flip eventually because it turned out to be even better than that week 1 indicated in my view. But the average rating here was a 5. The audience that week gave him a 5.
Yeah. Well, and also to be fair, the early season ratings, a lot of them came out to 5s just because of the law of averages.
It's true.
But I do think that some of the concerns with JC in week 1 is he seemed a lot more performative. He didn't seem genuine, and it didn't seem like there was a chance that he would be able to keep up any of the good work he was doing. And again, he was just doing so much. And when someone's just doing the most, especially in week 1 of Big Brother, it's really hard to think that they're going to have any kind of longevity.
Yes. He was also, when we asked, no, sorry, we don't have that information yet, but I started asking the audience who their favorite house guest was around week 3. So once we get to week 3, we'll start giving you those percentages as well.
The updated rankings with math. This is so exciting.
Oh, yeah. So here you go. JC, he gets his way. Steve ends up getting evicted. Of course, this is due to Tyler's work. However, JC is able to successfully say, hey, this is where my vote is going, and nobody was mad at JC. After the eviction, of course, Kaitlyn is going to win the HOH, and Tyler is going to work very hard to make sure that he follows through with the work that he was doing the previous week, and convinces her to backdoor Swaggy. JC at this point still not even in consideration to be nominated. He's generally still seen as this free agent, and JC is actually going to be a pretty major supporting player here in terms of making sure Kaitlyn stays on track and making sure that she has all of the false information that she needs to backdoor Swaggy.
Yeah, so in this week is when you see Kaitlyn crying. She's very upset. She says that she needed to stand up for herself. And the stand up for herself part is literally a quote from JC talking to her of, this is going on. They said this about you. You need to be strong. You need to stand up for yourself. Like, what will people think if you don't do this? And that really did help a lot. Obviously, Tyler did the major work in this case, but the help from JC was very valuable.
Yes, JC really, there was a moment where, Tyler was pushing for Swaggy to go up, and Kaitlyn was not entirely sure, and she felt like she needed confirmation from other people that Swaggy was doing these things. And so, Tyler sent JC in there, and JC went in and was like, oh, yeah, he said all of these things. And Kaitlyn was, oh my God, it makes me feel so much better to hear you say this, JC, that you're confirming to me, like it's coming from another source too. And so JC was really able to put that nail in the coffin for Swaggy. And he spends the rest of the week being that support for Tyler, making sure that Kaitlyn stays on track, giving her reassurance, and generally just kind of making sure that the votes stay the way that they need to stay so that Swaggy goes home.
Yes. And then the other big thing from this week is that he did do a lot of talking actually with Swaggy himself. As a distraction to keep Swaggy from campaigning too hard to other people who may be more likely to flip their votes.
Yes, he's really working in tandem here with Tyler. Tyler tells him at one point that he's telling the other side that he feels like JC is their best chance at getting a vote for Swaggy, because he knows that JC is the person with the strongest mind, that he is not going to be swayed. He's very confident in JC, and he trusts JC to do this work, and that's exactly what JC does. He pretends to be somebody who's on the fence, who might be able to, vote their way. And so they do spend a lot of time focused on trying to get JC's vote, and not on people who would matter a lot more, like Kaitlyn, who at one point may have been flipped just through the little work that had been done on her, because she was a bit flippy floppy that week.
Just a bit.
Yeah. So throughout the week, he also gets closer to Fessy and tries to draw him in a bit more. After the Swaggy blindside, JC makes sure that, this is another reason why I think that JC was so gung-ho on making sure Swaggy leaves this week, because as he gets closer to Fessy, he's realizing that Fessy and Swaggy are so tight. If Swaggy goes, then JC can step in and take the role of like friend to Fessy. And so he's really trying to step into that role. Once Swaggy gets put up on the block, JC says, it's unfortunate, but we got to go with the house on this one. He's trying to get Fessy's vote. He's trying to step into that place of, now who else do you have? You've got me, Fessy. Maybe we didn't vote together. Maybe we're not even going to vote together this week, but you have me. We are going to be working together moving forward.
Yeah, and I wrote, start to see JC/Faysal relationship pop out more, is what I wrote here.
Yes. And he is also going to own up to his vote from the week before to everyone, including Swaggy, still citing the, Steve was giving me dirty looks thing.
Yeah, I had to do it for my game.
Yes. And for the most part throughout the week, he's going to continue to be playing both sides, feeding information back and forth, telling people like Fessy, like, hey, you got to watch out for these people on the other side, telling the level 6 people, hey, You got to watch out for Rockstar, stuff like that. And just generally, cementing his safety. That he's making sure JC is a very, very active player, and I want to try and emphasize that as much as possible every week, because he is constantly doing everything he can to make sure that he stays off the block. There is a reason that JC was never nominated until the double eviction, and it was not a coincidence. He was putting in an immense amount of work, a lot of which didn't work, but a lot of which did work, and all of it kept him off the block, even though there were a lot of times where he might have gone on the block or was close to going on the block. So a lot of that work happening throughout this week as well.
Yeah, and like he is brought up actually quite a lot in these first few weeks as like a potential, here's who I would want to go after next, here's what I would want to do. But just based on the way that the sides were, which JC did play a role in keeping the sides separate with the way that he was talking, not like major he did it, but he was definitely a part of it, and it made it so that he was never a viable target in the early game.
Yes, and so some of the details here about what he's JC is he does things like he tells Kaitlyn, oh, Swaggy was rooting against Tyler in the veto. That was really sketchy. This helps cement the backdoor on Swaggy. He says that he tells Tyler that he should use the veto on Scottie and not Winston, because JC is going to go to Scottie and coach him up on how to get Tyler to use the veto on him. Say, oh, you say you'll owe Tyler a favor. So Scottie feels like JC is on his side a bit. He is going, like I said, to tell Fessy that they need to vote with the House. He, at this point, is also very early stages of, he's a little bit concerned toward the end of the week about Tyler's relationship with Kaitlyn. He asks Tyler this week, are you falling in love with Kaitlyn? And Tyler, are you serious? It's like, hey, look, people are starting to talk. That's starting.
Yeah, and again, it's just like he gets very concerned about his male alliance members being too close with, the women in the house, and this is the first part of that, and that is definitely a thread that continues through the whole season.
Yes, and again, this Rockstar is confiding a lot of information in him because she trusts him way too much at this point,
and for honestly no reason. Like, yes, JC put in work, but he didn't put in so much work for Rockstar to have that level of trust in him.
Let's be real. I think we know why Rockstar trusted JC too much.
Hey, well, this isn't the Rockstar podcast, so anyway.
So she's talking. She hates Brett and Winston, and they're the definition of male privilege, and they're the worst. And JC, of course, is going to run that back to Brett and Winston to fuel their anti-Rockstar fire. This is again more of the him playing that sort of rat floater game where he's going back and forth. Completely, he's not caught at this point. He is completely in the shadows, doing a very successful job of it at this point in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we probably should have addressed this up front. Yes, JC is a floater. Being a floater is a valid and good strategy in the game of Big Brother. So we can just stop the debate. Enough.
Yes, JC truly the floater of the season. You might, because Tyler at the time was also playing both sides, but he was very, very loyal to one of the sides. JC was not. JC was loyal to Tyler, and he was other than that just doing anything he could to keep himself safe for as long as possible, and he was doing a pretty successful job of it.
Yeah, and it's crazy that he was successful because, again, he just is throwing everything at the wall that he can possibly have. He's throwing out names to literally everybody he talks to, and yet it didn't sketch people out to the level that they were like, okay, we got to take care of this problem.
Yes. So Swaggy is going to be evicted by a vote of 8 8-4. JC does again give Fessy the heads up that he's going to be voting Swaggy out toward the end of the week. And he's going to say, look, I'm voting with the house on this one. I'm sorry, man. There's nothing that can be done about it. This is, of course, the week that Scottie ended up flipping his vote as well. There were a lot of people that were considering voting with the house, but none of them did, except for Scottie, who did it in a Swaggy t-shirt.
Wow. And that really that kind of was the death to Scottie, because he was never trusted properly after that.
Well, it's gonna give JC some wild ideas moving forward. So it's gonna be an important part of JC's game. So week 2 comes to a close here. This week, the ratings on JC have gone up a bit. His average rating is a 6 out of 10. I have decided, okay, I was wrong about JC. I gave him a 3 last week. I'm up to a 6 this week. The audience has gone up to a 6 as well. And like I said, the average comes out to about a 6 for the week. So people are on the rise in terms of JC's game. He's doing pretty well at this point.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the ratings were that high for him that early. I don't know why, but it's good to know.
There you go. So we head into week 3, and Scottie is going to win the HOH after casting that Hinky vote. The week is going to start off a little bit rocky for JC. He does want Scottie to go after Rockstar at this point. He really just doesn't like her, and he wants her to go. He's a little bit worried about his rat floater status, that he might get caught after having exposed so much of her information. So he's trying to persuade Scottie to go after Rockstar, and he is going to fail here. Tyler is also going to try and fail as well. Scottie's got too much of a mind of his own.
Yeah, remember when Scottie had a mind of his own? But yeah, he pushes his reasoning with Scottie is, don't stir the pot too much. Don't make yourself a target. Rockstar was spreading your name around. You have to go after her. Really trying to impact this decision, which just didn't work out again because Scottie had his own mind for
yes. However, Scottie does still feel good enough about JC that he does let him in on the plan. He still, JC gave him a lot of advice the week before, made it seem like he was helping him get off the block. And so he does tell JC that, I'm going to be putting up Winston and Brett. JC is going to run that information around the house. And he's also going to, again, JC just very active in trying as much as possible. Now that Swaggy is gone, he's going to go to Bayleigh and try to work her, saying like he realizes that, now that Swaggy's gone, people are looking at her differently, and that, he's willing to work with her. A little too blunt there. This is going to backfire on him a bit later on, but he is making the attempt.
Yeah, he's trying, and it half worked.
Yes, the tagline for JC's Big Brother 20 game tagline, he's trying.
It half worked.
He's also spending some time trying to put some cracks into the level 6 group. He tries to separate Angela and Rachel as much as he can, trying to prevent them from being close. He's talking trash about Rachel to Angela, trying to say, Rachel should be the first one to go from that group. After, of course, Brett and Winston, or Brett or Winston, and that Rachel, she's a wild card. I was surprised to see JC saying all of these things that are later going to be believed by level 6. I don't know if these seeds, ended up being part of what sprouted into the whole Rachel debacle later, but it's certainly possible. He was definitely in there before anyone else, laying these sort of like, Rachel needs to go, she's annoying, she's a wild card. Those seeds long before the whole Rachel thing happened.
Yeah, and we'll definitely see a lot more of JC's game in that week. I was actually very surprised too when he's saying, was it this week when he was saying that Angela trusted him more than Rachel, or was that, it might have been later. But anyways, at one point I was like, wow, okay, well, no, but okay.
Yes. So with Brett and Winston on the block, JC initially wants Brett out of the game. He feels like Brett, he's a bigger threat, and Winston, he's this wild card. Winston's probably a little bit easier for JC to work with, and so he's campaigning to get Brett evicted. And at this point, he is pretty anti Kaitlyn. He feels like Kaitlyn is way too close with Tyler. It's putting a target on Tyler's back. Remember, from JC's perspective, he is in this house, and he is he's fine. Like, even though he failed to get Rockstar targeted, he is fine with Brett and Winston on the block. That just means we're gonna take some chunk out of the other side of the house. That's fine. It's him and Tyler in the middle right now. Yes. The problem is that Kaitlyn is sullying Tyler's name and dragging him down and getting him in a place where he's getting targeted. And JC is hearing this. He's hearing that Tyler is being targeted. He doesn't like it, and of course, there's also the element of jealousy that is going to permeate throughout the entire season. So he wants to he wants to make sure that Kaitlyn is the one that's targeted over Tyler. And to do this, he is going to campaign to get Brett evicted and put Kaitlyn as the face of this. He's going to blame Kaitlyn for everything that he does. So Kaitlyn is the one that's really pushing for Brett to go, according to JC. And maybe this will help not only accomplish his mission of getting Brett out this week, but also make Kaitlyn more of a target heading into next week.
Yeah, because he pictures the game as him and Tyler, back to back fighting against everybody else. And then he does, as you said, see Kaitlyn as kind of the interloper to that. So he wants Kaitlyn to be the next big target. He needs her out so that he can, fully focus on Tyler. It's again, just like with Faysal and Swaggy. Once Swaggy's gone, he can pull Faysal in closer. He sees that once Kaitlyn's gone, the bond with Tyler will be even stronger, and they can do more in the house, and they'll be free to move a little bit more between the alliances.
Yes. And, so he's telling Brett that the other side wants him gone. Brett doesn't understand why. And JC says it's Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn is the reason she's pushing hard for you to leave. He's also going to talk with Angela some more about Tyler and Kaitlyn and how they're too close, and how he wants to try and separate them. And so he and Angela scheme. They come up with the scheme. Angela's going to try and get close to Tyler so that she can pull him away from Kaitlyn, and so that's part of the scheme here.
So JC is confirmed a matchmaker. He created his own nightmare.
Yeah, sometimes he's too good at this stuff. Brett, something's gonna go down here. So first of all, JC is gonna get he's going to get caught because Brett and Bayleigh talk. Brett, who has been told by JC that that Kaitlyn is the one pushing for him to be evicted, he goes to Bayleigh and he talks about it, and he's like, he's trying to campaign, and Bayleigh lets him know, no, Kaitlyn's not pushing for you to leave. Kaitlyn's in fact the only person who's pushing for you to stay. And Brett is confused by that, and he says, well, that's not what I've been told. And Bayleigh says, well, who told you that? And Brett says, JC. JC told me that. At which point, Bayleigh is like, oh my God, what is JC doing? This is really sketchy. Brett, JC came to me earlier this week trying to pick me up as a number now that Swaggy's gone. JC's rat floater game has been exposed here a bit, and he's going to be a little bit in trouble. This is going to come back to Tyler. And Tyler is going to give JC some assistance here. He helps cover for JC with Brett and then Kaitlyn. However, for the most part here, especially with Bayleigh, he's going to be in a bit of hot water.
Yeah, and Bayleigh says it's one of several times this season that a house guest says, "Oh, just don't listen to anything JC says. You can't listen to a word he says." And it's crazy how early that narrative started, and yet people still did, to some extent, listen to him moving forward.
Yes. He is going to, things are going to change because Scottie is going to end up telling Kaitlyn that Brett and Winston pitched for Kaitlyn to go up as a replacement. And this was based on information that JC had given Brett, saying that Kaitlyn was the one who was pushing for Brett to leave. Kaitlyn is upset about this. She feels betrayed by Brett and Winston that they would push for her to go up as a replacement nominee. She confronts Brett publicly. If you guys remember this big argument that they had, and he says, "Look, I was told that you were coming for me." Now, he does not expose JC to Kaitlyn in this argument. However, she obviously finds out later, which again, Tyler helps try to cover for JC with Kaitlyn. But in this public argument, JC refuses to throw anyone under the bus. He just says, "I was told that you were coming for me. I'm sorry if it was wrong information. Kaitlyn's very upset. You should have confirmed with me before you went after me. Yeah. I thought we were friends," so on and so forth. This big public confrontation, and JC is going to go to Kaitlyn afterward and comfort her. "Oh, Brett, he's such a meanie pants." Then he's going to go to Brett afterward and say, "Thank you for not throwing me under the bus. You saved my life. I wasn't sure if I could trust you before, but now I know that you're a trustworthy guy. You did not throw me under the bus, and I feel much better about you." As soon as he talks to Tyler after this, JC says, "I want Brett to stay now. First of all, I think he's a trustworthy guy. Second, Kaitlyn's gunning for him. He's gunning for Kaitlyn. That's perfect for us."
Yeah, and in his conversation with Brett there, he literally says, "I was leaning towards getting rid of you until this happened, but now I feel good about you and now I want you to stay." And I mean, literally to say that to someone's face is absolute lunacy, but that's JC, right? And it did help start to form, the seeds of the JC Brett that never really panned out to what we wanted it to, but it was there from, week 3.
Yeah. This is what changes JC's mind to keep Brett in the game, which is obviously going to be important because they needed JC's vote to keep Brett around. If this doesn't happen, then who knows? JC may not have voted to keep Brett. We may have had Winston in the game. Could have been what happened. Now after being caught and after this whole thing with Brett, he's been caught with Kaitlyn, and he recognizes now that he's messed up a bit. Kaitlyn is kind of onto him, and Kaitlyn is kind of after him a little bit. So it's even more important for him to keep Brett around as a buffer between him and Kaitlyn. For as much as Kaitlyn has caught on to JC and him coming after her, she's way more pissed at Brett, and so he needs Brett in the game. It's very important that happens.
Yes, and he uses this to try and separate Fessy and Kaitlyn, because we can't really forget that Fessy and Kaitlyn did have a strong connection and were very close in the early part of this game. And JC talks to Fessy, I want to work with you, but I can't work with you if you're going to be telling Kaitlyn everything, and tries to really cement his relationship with Faysal further.
Yes, he tells Fessy at this point that you're my priority in the game. He's really trying to push hard to make sure that he has Fessy as his big, dumb Muppet. And he does still pretend that he's going to vote Brett out at this point because that's what Fessy wants. And he also helps protect Tyler with Fessy, saying that Kaitlyn is the one that bosses Tyler around, and that he feels like they can work with Tyler if Kaitlyn is not there. So after this blow up, JC he does find his legs here. He solidifies his relationship with Fessy and orchestrates the new plan. He's going to blindside Faute with his flipped vote, and he's going to frame Kaitlyn for it. His goal, of course, is to get Kaitlyn evicted the next week. He does not want Kaitlyn in this game at this point. Not only is she a distraction for Tyler, not only does she put a target on Tyler's back, but now she's even one of the few people that is naming JC as one of her potential targets. And so he wants to make sure that she is discredited and targeted in the next week as much as possible. And so he orchestrates this flip vote that him and Tyler both are going to secretly vote to keep Brett and not tell anyone what they're going to do. And this is JC's plan, and he tells Tyler, don't tell anyone, I will handle it, we will figure this out. And so that's what happens. Winston is evicted by a vote of 6-5, and there you go. That is the week.
There it is. And then it's another week of Fessy, what happened? What is going on? And JC's in the room. Like, yeah, what happened? Like, what's going on? Right? Just helping Fessy stay hopeless and confused.
Yes. This week, JC's average rating had gone down slightly. It's a 5.75 is the average rating. He got caught this week. He did manage to pull it off, but at the time we rated this, obviously we hadn't seen the flip vote plan, and this is I still had him at a 6, but the audience had gone down to a 5 this week, so the audience not quite as high on JC. So then we head into week 4, and right from the start, JC is going to pull off this framing the vote plan flawlessly. Nobody suspects JC. It causes utter chaos amongst Faute. He had dropped some hints to Bayleigh prior to the eviction that Kaitlyn might flip her vote. He's a little bit concerned, and so once the vote did flip, normally this might be seen as suspicious, but coming from JC, it worked. They heavily suspected that Kaitlyn was the one that flipped, and Fessy is going to come to bat for JC, saying there's no way JC flipped because he told me in both of the last votes that he wasn't voting for me. He was honest with me. There's no reason he wouldn't be honest with me this time around. It's not terrible logic, but it's not right.
That's just dangerous logic to get into, especially when you're playing Big Brother. You cannot assume that people are being honest to you. You just can't, right? Even if they have been in the past, it does not mean they're going to continue to do so. And he goes to Bayleigh. He says, Kaitlyn played us all. She's going to flip. And it just helps them believe that Kaitlyn did flip, even though that's not what happened here.
Yes, and obviously Brett in his speech, this is when he says that Rockstar came to him wanting a final 2. That is also going to help cause chaos, even though long term people didn't really believe that Rockstar was that vote. This final 2 thing is going to remain in their minds for quite a while. Ultimately, people are going to come down on the ultimate decision that Faute reaches is that the 2 votes were Kaitlyn and Tyler. However, JC is able to cover for Tyler enough that even if they do eventually think it's Tyler, they think that Kaitlyn is the one that orchestrated it. Kaitlyn is the one that they need to blame for it. Obviously, Kaitlyn was not the person who did this. They think that Kaitlyn and Brett planned the whole thing, that they would have this fake fight and then she would vote to keep him. Obviously she was the one that wanted Brett gone the most, but she is the one that's going to take the bulk of the blame for it, which is exactly what JC wanted.
Yeah, and it just keeps going back to making Kaitlyn more of a target throughout this week.
Yes, and he's even the one that proposes the theory that Brett and Kaitlyn, they planned the whole thing. They're like, oh yeah, they did.
Like, oh yeah, of course, they definitely planned the whole thing. That's so plausible.
So Sam is gonna win this HOH, and this really plays right into JC's hand. Nobody really had any influence on Sam, but arguably JC had the most. He's the one that she talked to the most about what she was going to do, and obviously he had an anti-Kaitlyn agenda, and Sam's nominations are going to fit along that agenda basically exactly how he would want. She ends up nominating Kaitlyn and Haleigh, and JC is very pleased.
Yes, and this is also the week where Sam says that JC is her best friend. So you can't undervalue the relationship at that time. These two little wild cards working together, but not really. Well, JC's working. Sam's there too.
Yes.
That's Sam's Big Brother game. Sam's there too.
He is going to continue to work Fessy and foster this bond. He tries to make more of a connection between Fessy and Tyler, especially if Kaitlyn is going to be leaving. He feels like this is the opportunity to make sure that Fessy is not coming for Tyler, that Tyler feels good enough about Fessy. He can keep his players in the game. Again, Fessy still feeling like it's him and Tyler playing the two sides off of each other. He's trying. If Fessy is one of the better competitors on this side, if he can keep Tyler safe with Fessy, Tyler's already safe with the other side, and that he can keep Fessy safe from Tyler and from potentially the other side as well. Fessy is a useful pawn for him at this point, so he's really working hard to keep all of this in play.
Yes, and this is where he puts together the conversation between Fessy and Tyler, where hopefully they can bond over what Kaitlyn has said and done to both of them, manipulating them, that she is controlling both of them, and that if they can get on the same page to get rid of Kaitlyn, he hopes that they can work together more closely to show Tyler that Faysal is more of an asset for their game.
Yes. So then Fessy is going to win the veto. And this concerns JC because he doesn't want him to use it. He feels like he might go up on the block as a pawn if Fessy uses the veto. He obviously doesn't want Fessy to save Kaitlyn because he wants Kaitlyn to leave. And even if Fessy doesn't use it on Kaitlyn, even if he uses it on Haleigh, he feels like, that might put them in a spot where Kaitlyn doesn't go because somebody else will be up on the block next to her. He tries to get Fessy to not use the veto. But he's of course unable to convince Fessy. For as persuasive as JC could be with Fessy, ultimately Fessy's only priority was Haleigh.
Yes, and especially at this point in the game, Bayleigh wasn't as established, obviously, as they become by the end. So Faysal wants to, prove himself. He wants to be the knight in shining armor, and he. At one point, he's talking to Haleigh about it, and Haleigh's like, "Well, but didn't you tell JC you're not going to use it?" And Fessy's like, "JC's going to be fine. Like, don't worry about it." And so he does use the veto when JC does not want him to, and this is when JC almost goes up on the block, but he speaks up in the moment.
Wes, well, after he fails with Fessy, he does try to convince, and because this is, again, it's more example of who JC was in this game. He tries to convince Fessy to not use the veto. He gives reasons for, like, you should be loyal to me and not use the veto. It would be bad for me. You should not use it because it would be bad for you. You should not use it because it would be bad for Haleigh. It would be bad for your alliance. None of this works with Fessy. So then, normally somebody would be like, "Oh, I failed." No, not JC. JC goes to Haleigh and tries to convince Haleigh, you don't want the veto to be used on you. You don't want to be taken off the block, because if you get taken off the block, then Rockstar will take your place and Rockstar will go home over Kaitlyn, whereas you will not go home over Kaitlyn. If you want Kaitlyn to leave, you have to be the one sitting next to her. And he actually is fairly successful at convincing Haleigh that she doesn't want to get taken off the block. Haleigh tells Fessy, I don't even know if I want you to use the veto on me. And not just because she doesn't want to be in his debt, but also because genuinely she says to many people, I actually feel like I don't want Rockstar to replace me. Rockstar will go home. I know I'm feeling pretty good that I'm safe. So, he actually does a decent job. Of course, Fessy wouldn't care what Haleigh said. It's not about, doing what Haleigh says. It's about doing what he feels like will put Haleigh in his debt. So Fessy is going to still use the veto. And yes, as you mentioned, mid-ceremony, Sam is about to say that she's going to put JC on the block. This would be his first time touching the block, of course, because he's somebody that nobody would vote out. But mid-ceremony, he says, no, don't do this. I would not do this to you. And she says, okay, fine, Rockstar, take a seat. And he's able to, again, like, who else would have thought to do that? other than JC. He tries so hard in this game, and he is constantly working as much as possible. Mid-ceremony, he's telling Sam not to do this, and he prevents himself from being nominated. I think you have to give him kudos for that.
Yeah, and I feel like that particular moment of the season is where a lot of people started to turn on Fessy, like thinking better of him from an audience perspective. Whereas like he was already getting, people were impressed with him. They didn't expect this level of gameplay from him. But at that moment when it's like, wow, in the veto ceremony, he literally changed his fate and made sure that he stayed off the block and ensured his safety. That's huge. We've never seen that before.
Yeah. It was pretty impressive. So we're gonna go from pretty impressive to not impressive, as this is also the week, I believe, where JC is going to, JC and Bayleigh, they've had this contentious relationship ever since he got caught with her the previous week, and they're going to get into an argument about the N-word, and this is important for the game because he's never going to recover from this with Bayleigh. Bayleigh is after this point going to continue to call JC some unkind things about his height in very derogatory ways throughout the rest of her time in the house.
Yeah, it started as a conversation that wasn't going in a bad direction, and that just went off the rails completely. He didn't show the understanding or compassion to get Bayleigh back, and it really did. It hurt him so much with Bayleigh, and he never recovered from that.
Yes. So that's important to note here, because as he's in the middle of making sure that Kaitlyn leaves this week, because she is basically the only person in the house that's really coming after him, he really solidifies one more person. Bayleigh is now somebody that is potentially going to be targeting him, that is not happy with him. So he is going to pretty quickly shift to wanting Bayleigh out after this and some more events in the future. But for now, this week, he does not want Bayleigh out. He still doesn't, like, he feels like he's he apologized and he feels like it's fine for now. But that resentment is going to stick with Bayleigh, and she's going to let that show in future weeks. And JC is going to catch on to that and feel like, okay, I need Bayleigh out. So he also, he discovers the love triangle. He lets between Fessy, Kaitlyn, and Tyler. He lets them know. He tries to orchestrate this meeting between them. He's then going to have to fight Tyler for the first time in the season. He is in disagreement with Tyler. Tyler wants Kaitlyn to stay. JC says, what are you talking about? I've made all of this happen just to get Kaitlyn gone. What do you mean? Yes, I don't want Rockstar here either, but Kaitlyn is the threat here. Kaitlyn is causing harm to your game. She's one of the few people that has my name in her mouth. We need Kaitlyn gone.
Yeah, and Kaitlyn's coming second in all of these competitions. She's so dangerous. She's such a competition beast. We need to target her now.
Yes, and so he really tries hard. Tyler says, "Don't, dude. She is my puppet. I control this girl." And JC's like, "No, you don't. You are being controlled by her. You're being blinded by this. He does not trust Tyler." It's funny because throughout the game, JC does a lot of work to help Tyler, and Tyler does a lot of work to help JC. However, whereas where Tyler genuinely feels like, oh, JC is doing good work to help me, JC feels like he does not really understand how much work Tyler is doing to help him, and a lot of this, of course, is because he doesn't realize just how much influence Tyler has with level 6, but also he just doesn't trust that Tyler is good enough to do this work. Tyler is telling him, I can keep you safe with Kaitlyn, and JC doesn't believe that Tyler is capable of that. He feels like, again, he sees he sees this as Dan in Memphis, Derek and Cody, and he's the Dan or the Derek, and Tyler is the Cody or the Memphis, and like, it's cute that you think you can do all of this on your own, but without me, you're nothing. So I need to make sure that we are going in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And Tyler's his biggest blind spot of the entire season is he doesn't realize exactly what Tyler is actually doing, because JC is a legend in his own mind. He is running the entire house. He is making all of this happen. And yeah, him and Tyler are working together, but he really sees himself as this, this big player, that he is the next great, it's going to be Dr. Will, Dan, and JC, right? At least in JC's mind, that's how he feels, right?
Yeah. So he's going to push really hard to make sure Kaitlyn leaves. He pushes hard to the rest of level 6 as well. And they are pushing back a little bit, but he is really trying to make sure this happens. They say, no, but we should be keeping Kaitlyn. He does not succeed in convincing them in the moment. However, it is a motivation for them to end up keeping Kaitlyn because they don't want JC pissed off at them. They don't want JC to flip to the other side. So they're worried about that. And so a part of them wants to, just say, okay, we're giving in to what you want, JC. So JC is going to actually win the battle between Tyler and himself in terms of who he wants evicted. However, he gets a massive assist by Kaitlyn herself, who, as we all know from that week, really shoots herself in the foot quite a bit. And despite the fact that JC provided a lot of incentive for level 6 to flip over, I would say Kaitlyn gets most of the credit there with, again, an assist by JC.
Yeah, well, and that's the week that we were talking about. Rockstar and Kaitlyn were basically fighting to be evicted. Neither of them were campaigning particularly effectively. And then back to the Tyler and JC relationship. This is where, I know it's not the Tyler podcast, but Tyler does good work by letting JC have his way sometimes, because if he hadn't, they wouldn't have been together so tightly for so long. And it's important to recognize that as part of JC's game.
Yes. So after Tyler, after the rest of level 6 flips in terms of wanting to keep Kaitlyn around, evict Kaitlyn, Tyler goes back to JC and says, all right, we'll take Kaitlyn out. That's fine. I'm on board. And they reaffirm their bonds together. And they're closer than ever. They talk about their end game plans. JC wants some weak players in the game to bring to the end with them. People like Haleigh, people like Kaycee, people like Bayleigh. He wants these people in the end with them so that they can have a strong shot at winning toward the end. Kaitlyn is, of course, then going to be evicted by a vote of 9-1, where JC is going to cast, once again, a hanky vote in order to cause some more chaos. He doesn't tell anyone about this, including Tyler. And to this day, nobody knows that JC cast this vote to keep Kaitlyn in the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of times we talk about these hinky votes, how they always come out, how they're never a great idea. We had just famously seen it blow up in Big Brother Canada this year. And JC shows that you can have a little bit of fun with this and it can work out for you, kind of.
Yes. He was so successful the previous week. I think that he felt like this is a perfect opportunity to make sure that somebody else ends up, taking some blame and causing some more chaos, because he feels like, not only is he playing the two sides off of each other, but he's trying to cause dissension within their own ranks as well. With enough chaos, he is truly the little finger of the house. With enough chaos distracting everyone, nobody can take the time to target somebody like JC when they're worried about their own alliance, they're worried about the other side of the house, and JC is just that free agent that's hanging around being cute, as JC would say. So that's JC's plan here. This week, JC's average dips a little bit more to a 5.5. Of course, these ratings happened before the eviction. So at the time we gave this rating, he was trying and failing to get Kaitlyn evicted. And it seemed like even if he did get Kaitlyn evicted, she would not stay evicted because she was supposed to be returning with the bonus life.
I'm still so traumatized. But you know what? It worked out that she was gone. And again, yeah, he he helps create this chaos. He truly sees it as a ladder. And by creating all of this, it makes it so that he's not a feasible target. Even if people are talking about targeting him, it's like, well, we can't waste our time on getting JC out because we need to worry about, these cohesive groups rather than JC who's by himself.
Yes, and I did forget to mention also last week when I started to ask who your favorite house guest is in the Big Brother 20 house on the roundtable forums, JC got about 4% of the vote, not particularly high, and he is going to hover around 4% here. His percentage goes up a little bit; it's about 4.7 in week 4, and it's gonna continue to hover around 4% for a few more weeks. That's about where JC stands with the fan favorite status.
Well, and if he would not do so much problematic shit, it wouldn't be so low.
Yeah. So we head into week 5, where Bayleigh is going to win the HOH. So he is going to avoid detection for the Hinky vote. However, people are going to start to think that, he's worried that people are going to think it's Tyler. So, which I think is something that he didn't really consider. Tyler does a good job of deflecting on his own, but JC feels like, okay, crap, who, I don't want it to fall on Tyler. Okay, so let's frame Scottie. Scottie's an easy person to frame. He flipped a vote before, so he enacts Operation Frame Scottie Part 1. There are many parts to this operation, and it's very successful. He casts a lot of suspicion on Scottie, who admitted to his previous flipped vote. Bayleigh initially intended on potentially backdooring Scottie with her HOH. It didn't last for very long because Scottie is genuinely incredibly loyal to her, and it's very hard for her to not see that, even though Fessy didn't see that.
Okay, but we can't make judgments based on what Fessy saw or what Fessy didn't see.
Yes. Nobody suspects JC is the Hinky vote. He was pushing the hardest of all people for Kaitlyn to leave. So why would JC be the person that voted to keep her? So with Bayleigh as HOH, she is distracted a little bit with Scottie, but ultimately that does not go anywhere. However, this suspicion of Scottie is going to remain in the air and help JC out when he needs it later. Unfortunately for JC, like I said, Bayleigh, after getting Kaitlyn out, who is the one person who had JC in her mouth, Bayleigh is the one person that can't win the HOH. Bayleigh is the one person that's thinking about JC as somebody that she might want to put up as a pawn at all, and she ends up winning this HOH, of course, after their whole argument with the N-word stuff. So he managed to get Kaitlyn out, but now Bayleigh is here, and this is going to cause some trouble for him. However, JC's social connections are actually pretty decent here. Even if Kaitlyn had stayed in the game, he did have Tyler to protect him there, and with Bayleigh, he had Fessy to protect him, and Fessy actually does a decent job here of protecting him. Bayleigh wants JC up on the block as a pawn, and Fessy is the one to come in and go to bat for JC, telling Bayleigh that she should not be putting JC on the block. JC is an asset to him, and that instead she should put Rachel on the block. And what an important moment this is. I think this is incredibly underrated in terms of its importance on the season, because if Bayleigh puts up JC here, she does not reveal her power to Rachel. Rachel obviously doesn't go home. I imagine that Brett is the one that ends up going home this week, or potentially JC, but not as likely. So there's a lot of interesting stuff here.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of interesting when Bayleigh is talking with Rachel, when Rachel finally is like, yeah, you can put me up on the block, which is the start of her downfall. Bayleigh is worried that JC will freak out so much if he goes on the block. She calls him a munchkin, says she doesn't want him losing it on her, and she just doesn't want to deal with putting JC up since he's going to freak out. And so that's when Rachel's like, okay, well, whatever, you can just put me up, which then leads to her freaking out and her subsequent eviction, which, in another world, it could have been JC.
Could have been JC. Because of this, because he's been working on Fessy for so long, and Fessy has this in with Bayleigh, Fessy is able to keep JC off the block. JC does come in and seal the deal with Bayleigh afterward, and he does have this sort of persona of like, it's not worth putting on the block if you're not going to send him home. There you go. That he does remain off the block largely due to Fessy's work. Kaycee is actually going to be the person that Fessy is fighting with here. In terms of influence, it's going to be Fessy versus Kaycee. Kaycee is pushing for JC to go up on the block so that Rachel doesn't go up on the block. Kaycee makes some decent progress with Bayleigh, but she is going to get out influenced by Fessy in this moment. And
so embarrassing.
Yeah. And JC is going to remain safe for the week here. And of course, JC does not believe Fessy when Fessy tells him, I kept you off the block.
Yeah, he's like, well, I've been doing that for you this whole season, so like, don't worry about it.
And he says like, hey, look what happened last week. I was in charge of making sure that Kaitlyn left, and it happened. I kept you safe. That I've kept you safe, and he doesn't believe that Fessy had the influence to keep him safe.
He really thinks he kept himself safe, and he thinks that he has kept Fessy safe this entire season, and he shows absolutely no appreciation for Faysal here.
Yes. So, of course, Tyler is going to win the power of veto. And again, I can't even describe all of the conversations that JC has, but JC is constantly checking in with every single person in the house. He does not leave a single person untalked to. And when Tyler wins the veto, he goes around to every person and gives them incentive, gives them a reason for not wanting Tyler to use the veto, because he knows that if Tyler uses the veto, there's a very good chance he goes up on the block. So he makes sure that everybody thinks, shouldn't use the veto. You might go up on the block. Something might change. Something bad might happen. And so then with everybody agreeing with him, he's then able to go to Tyler and be like, yeah, don't use the veto. Nobody wants you to use it, and all of this stuff. Just doing a lot of work to make sure that he stays off the block this week. Tyler, of course, is not going to use the veto because he is worried that Angela might go up, even though it is possible that JC or Scottie could have gone up. At this point, he doesn't really care who leaves. He had been putting a lot of work into make Rachel seem like a wild card that should go, but he's at the very least claiming like, oh look, I pushed really hard last week. I don't want to push my luck this week. So Tyler makes him promise, if I don't use the veto, then you need to vote Rachel out. And so JC says, okay, we're good. So he's fine with this. I do think there are a couple other motivations that JC did actually want Rachel out. First of all, if he votes Rachel out over Brett, that's against Faute's wishes, and he is able to frame Scottie with another hinky vote, and continue to get these people worked up. There's also, he's not particularly concerned about a women's alliance, but taking Rachel out secures the fact that there won't be. Obviously, this is something that's been growing in terms of momentum this week, the women's alliance. So JC obviously not being a part of that is like, well, if we take a woman out, that's good for us. Also, finally, he does have a better working relationship with Brett than he does with Rachel. Ever since that whole Brett versus Kaitlyn fight, he has been working on Brett just a little bit. So there are a lot of reasons here that he would want Rachel out over Brett, and he's also happy that the level 6 side is losing another person. They're continuing to even out the sides here.
Yes, he wants to make sure that the sides are not too lopsided, that he gets to stay in the middle, and this is also where more framing of Scottie. This is where Operation Scottie is my BFF comes out with Tyler. And this is where Brett is spending time with Scottie for the sole purpose of ensuring that JC will be able to blame the vote on Scottie moving forward.
Yes, and the reason why I think he had reasons to want Brett to stay. However, he didn't want to push his luck in terms of voting against Faute again. Like this is he was a little worried about that. I think that's why he was on the fence. So it was Tyler said, well, we can blame Scottie. It will look at like Scottie has taken the fall for all of these votes, and that's sort of that plus the fact that he promised he would vote Rachel out if Tyler didn't use the veto is what is going to allow JC to feel like, okay, I'm willing to take this shot. We can blame Scottie, and so JC then helps orchestrate Operation Frame Scottie Part 2.
Yes.
So Tyler's gonna have a lot of assistance with this one, where he's gonna make sure Brett is hanging out with Scottie a lot to build up the suspicion. JC is going to play up to Faute that he really wants Rachel to stay. He is a loyal number to them, and he does something else that's really clever, which is he tells Rachel that she has his vote. Like, you have my vote, but don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know that you have my vote. And of course, he knows that Rachel is going to go tell people, I've got JC, but he didn't want me to tell anyone, which really makes it look like JC is obviously going to be voting for Rachel to stay, because why would he tell her not to tell anyone if he wasn't actually planning on voting that way? So this a lot of work here to make sure that Scottie is going to be framed.
Yes, and he uses Rachel's, she totally was freaking out this whole week, and he uses that to get the information that he wants disseminated through the entire house. Another part of this week that I found very interesting was when he's talking to Tyler about how he has not won any competitions yet, and he feels that it's soon time for him to do that. And Tyler says, no, like, I'll win competitions. You're the social game guy. And I feel like Tyler says that to JC one time, and that really frames how JC talks about himself the rest of the game. Like, he starts saying things like, I'm really good at talking. I can convince anyone. I can flip votes. I can do this. And he doesn't really bring up not winning a competition again after this. And it really just took very little from Tyler to convince him on that.
Yes. So we and another thing to point out is that he does get in trouble with Sam this week because they see clips from the show, and they see when JC falls from the endurance competition. She thinks that he threw the competition, and they're going to get into a bit of an argument there. It comes a little bit into play. It kind of sours their relationship. Up until that point, Sam was talking about JC, one of her best friends. He never really recovers from that with his relationship with Sam. So kind of important to note there. So Rachel is then evicted by a vote of 5-4. Another blindside for Faute, and JC is going to operate once again with the plan here to frame Scottie. JC's rating this week has been bumped up here to 6.25. So
that's a big jump from the last week.
Yes, people are getting more and more on board the JC train. That they're feeling better about him.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to think. One week you said JC train. It reminded me that I was going through everything yesterday. There's a point where Fessy's like, I'm going to tell JC to get on the train or he's going to get run over, and that's what that just reminded me of.
Yes, really big train here.
Yeah, big train, okay? And then again, he is in the room with Faute when they are trying to determine who flipped, what happened. There's just no trust in that group, and that really does benefit JC. And he did contribute to that lack of trust. That can't be understated.
Yes, this is JC at peak Littlefinger, week 6. Angela is going to win the HOH, and he causes some serious chaos within Faute. They are all he masterfully plays them off of each other as they get into the he's in a room with them. It's like a whodunit, and they're trying to figure out which one of us is the killer. And they are blaming every single person in that room except for JC. He does a really, really good job here. He has Scottie completely, in the dark in terms of like, Scottie, it wasn't you, right? And Scottie's like, no, it wasn't me. And it's like, okay, well, I'll try and keep you safe this week, and all of this stuff. It's very, very impressive stuff. He's got them blaming Rockstar at one point. He's got them blaming Scottie. He's got Fessy. He sticks up for Haleigh to Fessy in a way that makes Fessy paranoid about Haleigh. Like, it would never be Haleigh would never do that to you. That would make you look like the dumbest man in America if Haleigh was doing that to you. There's no way that Haleigh would be making you look so stupid like that. Very good stuff from JC.
Yeah, Haleigh would never. Which, I mean, true, she wouldn't, but
yes. So at this point, JC did find out about Bayleigh's power through Tyler previous to Brett outing them. However, he wants to make sure that Bayleigh goes home this week. Bayleigh is his target. Bayleigh has a power. Bayleigh is still the one person that might come for him. He did have to rely on Fessy, obviously, though he thinks it was himself the previous week to remain off the block.
But he thinks it was a lot of work.
Yes.
So he doesn't want to have to do that again.
Yes. So it really, like, anytime somebody mentions JC as a target in this game, they go home. And we're going to continue to see this happen. So Bayleigh is his target here this week. And that's the plan here. Angela is planning on taking Bayleigh out. However, there is a wrinkle in the week, and that is the hacker competition. After the hacker twist competition, he's the only person. They're all waiting around, waiting for the hacker to make their nominations. They're getting called to the diary room one by one. Obviously, we know Haleigh ended up winning this competition. And she ends up nominating Tyler. But JC is going around to people like Scottie, who he thinks may have won this competition, saying, it would be really dumb if the hacker put up Tyler, because, obviously Tyler can just win the veto, and then, everything will not work out. He's trying to protect Tyler. He knows he's not in danger of being nominated at this point, and he's trying to make sure that Tyler doesn't get put up on the block. Of course, he does not get to Haleigh in time, and Haleigh is going to put Tyler on the block. So another attempt that ends in failure, but an attempt nonetheless.
Yes, but I mean, and he tried, and it was really fun. Like, this early to middle part of the game was so fun and so interesting, and I do think that JC was a big part of that. Like, he was constantly just trying things, and I think that, as much as on a personal level, a lot of people, including myself, do not like JC, we have to accept that he created a lot of entertainment. And as a game player, he did provide a lot, right? So I'm trying to think, though, if he had gotten to Haleigh at that point, would he have even been able to stop her from putting up Tyler, though? Because I'm not 100% convinced of that anyways.
Probably not, but I don't think Haleigh was, like, dead set against Tyler. Maybe if he had said the right thing, she could have gone after somebody else. It's certainly possible. But obviously, I think if she had talked to anybody, even if it wasn't, I think if she had talked to Fessy or Bayleigh, I think that if she talked to anybody other than maybe Rockstar, I think she would have put somebody other than Tyler on the block, potentially, and certainly would have picked somebody different to play in the veto. So Tyler ends up going up on the block. JC's not happy about this, and he is getting increasingly annoyed with Haleigh and her relationship with Fessy. Ever since Fessy used the veto on Haleigh, he's been kind of, he's going in order. Fessy used the veto on Haleigh. He needed Kaitlyn out that week, so Kaitlyn left. Then it got into, he found out that Bayleigh was close to putting him on the block, and she had a power, so he needs Bayleigh out next. But he's starting to think maybe Haleigh should be my next target here. Maybe I should get the target put on Haleigh next in order to eliminate her influence over Fessy. That's in his mind here.
Yeah, and it goes back to when he was worried about Tyler and Kaitlyn, and earlier in the season when he was worried about Fessy and Haleigh. He doesn't want the men that he is working with, that he perceives himself to be controlling, to be distracted by a woman. He doesn't want them to have any other place to go except for to him. He needs to be their number one, so that he can maintain that control and continue building the chaos in the game.
Yes. So we are going to see Angela quote unquote win the veto. Tyler wins the veto and gives it to Angela. Yeah. And Jaycee is once again going to prepare here to flip the vote because with Angela removing Tyler from the block, of course, Rockstar is going to go up in his place, and it's going to be Rockstar versus Bayleigh. And Jaycee wants to ensure that Bayleigh leaves. He is astonished at how terrible Rockstar is at the game, because she's talking about I don't think Bayleigh was the hacker, and he's like, what is wrong with you? Why are you campaigning for the person you're sitting next to? This is atrocious behavior.
Like, even if you think that, why are you saying that, right?
Yeah.
And it is also important to mention here that he is particularly upset with Bayleigh because he is not happy with the way Bayleigh is acting. This is when they have the potato chip situation. Jaycee just wants a chip, and Bayleigh snatches the bag out of his hand, and he's like, I will do whatever it takes to get Bayleigh out of this game. I will jeopardize my own game to do it. I'm going to be eating those chips in the veto ceremony when she goes up. And it's just, he is totally done with her and so annoyed with her.
Yeah, ever since that argument, Bayleigh has been very anti-Jaycee, and he's really discovered that, and it's really turned into something here that they haven't been able to repair. Of course, the whole Haleigh admitting she was the hacker thing happens. The Bayleigh with bloody teeth thing happens. Jaycee is going to comfort Tyler after the fact and rant about Bayleigh. I believe just yesterday on the feeds, Jaycee was telling Tyler like the one time you got into a fight, you cried. I don't think you're the villain, dude.
Yeah. Oh, it's always so fun when they remember the time, Like, yeah. Hey, remember that time you cried? And that is definitely like the Jaycee move too, right? He is not going to be like, oh, remember the good times we had? Remember how much fun we had? And like, yeah, remember that time when you got in a fight and you cried about it? You're so weak. You're not the villain.
Yes. So Jaycee, he wants to make sure that Bayleigh leaves here. Bayleigh is his biggest threat in the game at this point, and so he prepares once again to flip the vote. And obviously Faute is not expecting this, but he doesn't want to push his luck too much. He says he's gone too many times voting and having to do this hinky vote thing. He's been very successful at it, but he doesn't want to push his luck. He wants to be honest about his vote this time, or at least somewhat honest. So he remains very vague about his vote for most of the week, claiming he doesn't want to say what his vote is because he doesn't want the hacker to nullify it. And Faute, they don't really mind that he's not telling them, because again, it's back to the early weeks where Jaycee, he's kind of this free agent. He's kind of a wild card. He's gonna vote whichever way he feels is right. He kind of doesn't like either of them, so who knows where he's gonna vote. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter because we have the votes anyway. We've got Brett. So that's kind of what they're feeling for most of the week.
Yeah, and the hacker competition really does help Jaycee insulate himself a little bit, because he does really rely on, well, I don't know who the hacker is, so I can't tell you what I'm going to do. And if that competition had not been a part of the season, he would have been forced to be at least slightly more open about it, because he wouldn't really have the excuse of, oh, well, this is why I don't want my vote to be talked about.
Well, I think that that this actually backfires, because I think that he relies on that a little too much as the crutch, and so this new strategy of being honest at the last minute for JC is going to backfire in a pretty hard way coming into the next week. So basically, what he does is at the last minute he goes to Scottie and tells Scottie, "Hey, we don't have the votes. So because we don't have the votes, I am going to be voting this other way." And Brett is in on this too, and it becomes this big mess of a situation. And you know, so they're all like, "Oh my God, we don't have the votes all of a sudden," and they all end up flipping their votes. And Bayleigh ends up being evicted by a vote of 6-1, and the one being Sam. Of course, the level 6 people, Kaycee and Tyler in particular, failed to secure Sam's vote. And after the vote, the Faute people are going to realize, hey, if we had stuck with our votes, then we could have kept Bayleigh in the game. And so what the hell was JC on about? This is super sketchy, between what Sam ended up doing and what the whole sketchiness of JC. Basically, Scottie in particular is going to be like, wait a minute. Hold on, hold your horses. And that's going to be the end of this week. So interesting stuff there.
Yeah, it ends with Scottie saying, does JC arrange the votes every week so that he can blame it on other people? And it's, that's how it ends.
Yes. So JC's average rating this week is a 6.5. It's bumped up a little bit more. Especially, you know, the peak Littlefinger situation, I think really helped him out in terms of that. And Bayleigh is going to be our first jury member. Bayleigh, of course, is leaving the house, not liking JC, calling him Munchkin. They never really connected again after that N-word argument, and she is not somebody that JC can count on for a vote in the jury against really anyone. In terms of at least like JC is never gonna get Bayleigh's vote as like, oh, I'm so happy that JC won. If he gets Bayleigh's vote, it's gonna be because she hates the other person more.
Yeah, and the, total death of his relationship with Bayleigh, which, to be fair, was never super strong. It does show a major weakness in JC's game, where he has trouble admitting that he was wrong in any situation, game and otherwise. And if he had just been willing to say, I was wrong and I'm sorry, and I've learned something from this and I will not do it again, he probably could have actually salvaged that relationship a little bit more, because it's not like Bayleigh had so many places she could turn to, but his stubbornness and his unwillingness to admit that he's wrong is a major failing in JC's game.
Yes. So moving into week 7, JC has been caught. He's finally been caught. Scottie is on to him. Scottie is saying, JC, we had the votes and JC talked us out of it. This last second thing, it seemed like he was trying to set me up to vote the wrong way. I've been being framed all season long. Has it been JC this whole time? And Scottie is going to really cement this idea into his own brain. Scottie is now, just as JC gets out the last of his enemies, another one is created in Scottie. And Scottie is a dangerous enemy because he's very good at competitions and he is not as easily persuaded away, especially by people like Fessy. But that's not even all of JC's problems this week, because he's not only caught with Scottie, but Haleigh is going to win this HOH. And she has just recently reconnected with Scottie, and Scottie told her the week before that Fessy had made an alliance, a final 3 with Bayleigh and Scottie, and that was a thing. So Haleigh was very skeptical of Fessy at this time. They get into a fight, and Fessy wants to know, who told you this? Who is tearing you away from me? Lisa. And so Haleigh will not tell him. So Fessy decides to offer up some information of his own. In order to get the information from Haleigh, in order to reconnect with Haleigh, he says, well, I've been told that you have been doing things behind my back. And she's like, well, who's been telling you that? And Fessy decides, all right, here we go. If I tell you, then you're gonna tell me who's been targeting me. And so Fessy throws JC under the bus in order to get the information about Scottie. So now, not only is Scottie against JC, but Haleigh has finally discovered, oh my God, JC has been in Fessy's ear trying to get him to turn on me. She lets Rockstar know, and now both Haleigh and Rockstar are very anti-JC. They don't trust him at all. Scottie is anti-JC, and all three of those people are going to spend the entire week trying to convince Fessy, you have to drop JC. He is no good for you.
Yes. And so JC works with Fessy this week, trying to convince him that Haleigh is more with Brett than with him, trying to, separate them to protect himself and insulate himself. And this is also the week where Tyler, very frankly warns JC, you are going to be a target if you continue playing sides like this. There's payoff to when Tyler called JC the social game guy, because JC literally says, you win competitions, I flip votes, because he truly believes that he has been the sole person behind these vote flips. And he really does think that he has been completely running all of this.
Yes. So this is not good. Not good for JC. Haleigh and Rockstar are talking about potentially nominating him if they get the hacker power. However, he does still have enough clout in the house that they are not willing to publicly nominate him. Similarly to Tyler, they will only feel comfortable nominating him as the hacker, and even then, it would still only be as a pawn. So his general work of positioning himself in the middle as a free agent and causing chaos is still good enough that even if he is put up, it has to be anonymously, and it has to be only still as a pawn. It's still not quite a target. They have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, he's never, a feasible target that they can actually root for him to go home, because they still kind of need him, right? They need the number, and they need to be able to deal with him. They can't outright target him because they know that will put them at a disadvantage.
Yes. And so over the course of the week here, obviously Haleigh is going to end up putting Angela and Kaycee on the block. Kaycee wins. The hacker power. Rockstar goes up. All of this is happening. All of it's kind of irrelevant to JC's game, who's kind of focused on putting out all of these fires. Because it's like, look, if somebody from level 6 goes, he initially had tried to get Sam on the block, but because Sam had clearly just voted as a wild card, and he's like, because it's really Sam is the one that ended up screwing him, because that's what really caused them to recognize we had the votes, and JC caused us to not vote that way. So he's like, well, let's get Sam up on the block. That obviously didn't work. Then he's focused on putting out all these fires. Scottie is convinced now that JC has been the thorn in his side all season long, and is trying so hard to get Fessy and the rest of them to flip on him. And JC is going to find out about this. He finds out that Scottie is campaigning hard against him. He finds out that Haleigh and Rockstar have been talking about him behind his back, and this is when he realizes, oh my God, I've been caught in a major way. This is not good. I need to reevaluate. And he essentially, this is a pivotal moment here. He decides, okay, I've lost these people. I need to, if I'm going to move forward, he tries to win them back, and it's not working. And so he goes, you know what? I need to embed myself with level 6 then. Obviously, he doesn't know they're called level 6, but he knows they're a group of people working together, and he decides, I need to sever some of my ties over here, because they're all like against me. They're not trusting me at this point. So let me try and ingratiate myself into this other group, find some cracks, and get myself in here. I'll protect myself. I'll insulate myself. I'll prop them up as bigger threats than me. So these people who are mad at me right now don't come after me first, because they have bigger fish to fry, and I'll try and find my way to the end with more of these people than these other people who are coming after me.
Yes, and this is where JC recognizes that he really can't hide anymore to the same extent that he has in the past. And he sits down with Faysal and he says, I tried to work with this team. There's no teamwork in this group. You guys just can't get on the same page. And he does put in work to try and maintain the relationship with Fessy while also, totally just jumping out of that side. He recognizes that he can't continue the way that he's been going.
Yes. So again, I know we generally saw this from the outside perspective of, okay, now JC is working with level 6 in earnest. From JC's perspective, he saw this group of people that had been somewhat fractured because Brett has been playing up this role of, I'm kind of pissed at them. And so JC sees an opportunity. He sees that it's still him and Tyler versus the two sides of the house. The two sides of the house right now are Haleigh, Rockstar, Fessy, and Scottie. And Haleigh, Rockstar, and Scottie are all fervently against JC at this point. Scottie saying that JC is his main target next week, which is even worse than Haleigh and Rockstar, who might just put him up as a pawn. And then the other side of the house is Brett, Angela, Kaycee, and Sam. Sam just voted as a wild card. She's kind of not in that group. She's been fractured a bit from that group. She was never really working with that group, just a number that was being used by them anyway. He sees Brett as a little bit more of a separate piece from that group because he was mad about the veto thing, and he's been acting and playing as this wild card, this lone wolf.
He's on an island.
And so he feels like Tyler, of course, is also working with them, but Tyler, in his mind, is more loyal to him. So he feels like, okay, I can, I was trying to play these sides off of against each other, but at this point in time, all of these people are against me. None of these people are against me. There are fractures here that I can exploit. Tyler can help me get in here. It's time to work with level 6. And this is the decision that he makes. Obviously, this is from his perspective, and it does kind of make sense from his perspective, although he has some wrong reads here. And so Tyler does help him. Tyler tells Brett, like, hey, JC's ready to make the move in with us. You need to get close to him. You need to work on your relationship with him. And JC is going to really try to make this work, try to get himself into this group. And it's his goal now. Okay, I now need to create some fractures here. I need to get some cracks going and make my way forward with the level 6 group.
Yes, and it is also worth noting that even Scottie, who is now wanting to target JC in the game, does not know who he can put JC up against where JC will go home. So that is to JC's credit. Even when he has totally alienated one of the two sides, well, not totally, but very much so, he still isn't a viable target because he wouldn't go home for the most part.
Yes. So he is going to spend the rest of the week, again, being vague about where his vote's going to go. And again, they don't really mind because they think the votes are going their way anyway. He is going to, once again, he does drop some hints to Fessy, like, hey, I know people are talking about me, and Fessy is not really forthcoming with the knowledge that, like, yeah, they're kind of against you. So JC, obviously, when it comes down to the vote, wants Rockstar to go. Rockstar is talking about him as somebody that she wants out of the house, and obviously he can work with with the level 6 side. So JC is he's going to spend some time bonding with Brett, and he's going to come up with Operation Frame Scottie Part 3.
Part 3. Well, there's nothing quite like a trilogy, right? So
yeah,
had to keep going with it. And the other thing too, sorry, is that he works with Faysal. He's like, I can keep you in good with Kaycee. Like, I'm good with Kaycee. I can protect you if this happens. Like, he does put in some work with Fessy, even though he has mostly cut with the other side.
Yes. So, and it's important for him to, he is back onto the frame Scottie plan because he needs Scottie to go. The next week, Scottie is actively targeting him. Scottie is going to try to get him out of the house. And this is the most danger he has been in all season long. He got caught in a major way, but he once again is going to, really get his feet under him. He fortifies himself within level 6. He gets closer to Brett. He comes up with the scheme to frame Scottie, and the best part about this plan is that Brett is the one that's going to take all the heat if it fails. So it's no blood on JC's hands, and he can potentially take out his biggest threat in the game. So by a vote of 5-1, Rockstar is evicted, and JC's average rating this week has fallen to a 5.5 once again. Again, he was caught. This was a bad week for him. He does turn it around by the end of the week a bit, but especially in the middle of the week when we did this rating, it was looking really bad for JC. Things were not looking up. Not the greatest rating, and then Rockstar is going to leave the house. Not feeling great about JC, feeling like he's a bit sketchy. He's untrustworthy. He's betrayed her confidence a few times. However, that doesn't mean that he's not going to get her vote against a privileged white male like Brett or Tyler.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that though it happened much earlier, Rockstar's the one who said, I don't like JC, I want JC out, but I can't be the one to do it because I am an ally to the LGBT community. And for that reason, even though he has burned her and Rockstar doesn't love JC, he still could get her vote in the end based on that.
Yes. So then we head into week 8. And this is JC's finest hour, of course. Yeah. Fessy is going to win the HOH. And JC confirms to Brett, hey, it's time for Operation Frame Scottie Part 3. We got to do it. Brett doesn't want to do it. Brett's like, dude, this is never going to work. Why would he believe me over Scottie? This doesn't make any sense. And JC says, listen, you shut your mouth. You do what I say. This is going to work.
It's like, just do it. You have to do it.
And he lays some groundwork. He tells Fessy, hey, Sam told me that Brett was voting to keep Rockstar. I don't know why, like, Sam thought that was the truth. Like, I don't know why, they had this final 2. Like, if they had a final 2, why would Brett vote against her? It really feels like that Brett was the one that kept her. And of course, this is very important for JC, because if Brett goes home, somebody that he'd been working on, then Scottie stays in the game with Haleigh. Haleigh and Scottie are both anti-JC at this point. It's not looking good for him if he can't pull this off. But he's really putting in the work.
Yeah, and so this is, of course, when Fessy says, okay, who voted to keep Rockstar? And, Scottie puts his hand up right away, and Brett takes a while to actually commit to the plan and own up to it. It is honestly shocking that worked at all, that Fessy had any doubt there. And JC explains it off as, Scottie just never believed that Brett would own up to his vote. Like, Scottie is lying. Scottie did this. Like, he just didn't anticipate that Brett would actually own up to it. And this is also where JC puts in really good work with Haleigh with the assist from a bottle of wine.
Yes. We all remember. F it. It was me. Great moments in Big Brother 20. And
nothing
again,
really as convincing as F it was me.
Yeah. Right before that whole meeting, Scottie and Haleigh were talking about going after JC the next week. That he wants JC gone as soon as possible. She, if Scottie had his druthers, Fessy would be targeting JC that week. Yeah. And Haleigh was kind of agreeing. Like, she was like, I know Fessy's not going to do it, but it would be great if we could get JC gone. And then this meeting happens and everything turns around. He goes to work on Haleigh. He explains why he's been distant with her, why he was saying those things to Fessy that she eventually found out. It's because, she made these moves that he didn't agree with, and all these things have been happening. She admits that she's made some mistakes in the game, and she's like, yes, you have made mistakes in the game. That's why I couldn't trust you.
He's like, I told you and you didn't listen. I told you what to do.
Yeah.
And you didn't listen, so I couldn't work with you.
He says, Scottie, he's been flipping the vote on all these votes. And, I guarantee you we flipped on this one. All of the things that, we went over this extensively during the season. All of the ways that JC, the methods that JC uses to crush Scottie here. He says, Scottie has a crush on you, and he's going to come after Fessy because of that. And Haleigh is completely swindled here. They actually, like, what people don't remember is that Haleigh wasn't even drinking at first. She was like on board with JC's plan, and then she started drinking, and then they talked to Fessy, and with the help of Haleigh, they JC convinces Fessy to go after Scottie, and JC and Haleigh, they're kind of friends now, and there you go. The move has been completed. Potentially the best move of the entire season.
Yeah, and especially too because when Fessy won that HOH, who was celebrating with him? Haleigh and Scottie. JC wasn't even there at that moment, right when he won. So to be able to completely convince both Haleigh and Fessy that getting rid of Scottie is in their best interest, it is very impressive for JC. It is one of the best things he did for himself the entire game.
Yes, and
if not the best.
And so, obviously this was a huge benefit to Tyler as well. You can't really give Tyler much credit for this beyond, him working with JC and keeping JC in the dark about his own motives and keeping JC working for him. Obviously, I think you have to credit the both of them for a lot of things, but the main credit here goes to JC. Although you would definitely give Tyler a lot of credit for having JC do this work for him, and keeping Tyler safe a lot. That is to Tyler's credit as well. But this is definitely a JC move.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't argue that. Honestly, he worked. He did work. He was not just doing nothing this entire time.
Yes.
This is also the week where JC begins to be very concerned about Tyler and Angela. He is like, I will destroy you if you get into a showmance. I will win HOH just to put you up against your girlfriend. He really becomes concerned about Angela this week.
Yes. JC promises Tyler if he gets into a showmance, JC will win HOH and he will put Tyler right up on the block next to his showmance. It's a promise.
I mean, he didn't lie. He actually kept that promise.
Didn't lie. This is also the week where JC gets pulled into a weird final three with Sam and Brett, and he's going to tell Tyler about it, which is going to be important. JC and Brett bond a lot more this week. They just pulled off a massive coup together, and so they're really bonding over that. And JC is going to start planting these anti-Angela seeds in Brett's head. Remember, just the week before, JC had decided, I need to give up on these other people on the Faute side. They are all against me. I need Scottie out. I need Rockstar out. I might need Haleigh out. That only leaves Fessy. So if that's the case, then I'm going to need to make some cracks in the other side. And he sees Brett as the weak link, and he is going to work on breaking Brett away from the rest of level 6 so that he has some more ammunition heading down the line. This is the point in the game where we said JC's doing a great job, but he's gonna need some parachutes. He's gonna need some way of continuing his effort here because he's running out of runway, and this is his plan. He's gonna start working on Brett. He's still got Fessy in the game. He's still got Tyler, or so he thinks. So in terms of where JC feels like he feels pretty good, and this work with Brett is going to turn out to be pretty successful.
Yeah, and he does a really good job of solidifying his relationship with Brett, with the aim of breaking up kind of the level 6 side, because again, to JC, he doesn't realize that level 6 is such a cohesive group. He sees that they've been working together, but honestly, anyone could really be cohesive as compared to Faute, right? And so he does a great job of working well with Brett while also, feeding enough information to Tyler to make Tyler, a little worried about Brett feeling left out, and that Brett could be the one to flip on level 6.
Yes. So he's trying to essentially get Brett, Fessy, and Tyler all on separate islands, being suspicious of each other, and going after each other, keeping Tyler out of it the most, which is, to Tyler's credit there, and unfortunate for JC. But Scottie is going to be evicted here unanimously. He's going to leave feeling bested by JC, that he was targeting JC, and JC helped get him out of the house. He says that JC is playing the best game. This is the first true, I would feel great about giving JC my vote. He's a great player of this game. Things are looking positive for JC in terms of Scottie's jury vote. And JC's average rating this week is going to be a 7.5, the highest rating of the season for JC, where his stock price is going to be $8, rounded up to $8. So there you go. This is things are looking pretty good for JC at this point.
Yeah, he really seems like he could be a big contender for the endgame.
Yes. Another interesting thing to look at here, we can, the great Christina Z put together a little infographic here of some of these stats that I'm going to bring up on the screen. And you can see here, week 8, his highest point of the season, as Kirsten can see.
You know what? We're really bringing the production value. Look at that.
Yeah.
High point. JC.
So this is when he reached the peak stock price here, and it's about 25% of the audience gave him a rating of 9 or higher this week, and that's second only behind Tyler, and then also his fan favorite percentage shot up here this week, from a low point last week of 3.56 to a high, or one of his highs here, of 10.1% of the vote for fan favorite. He is in second place behind Tyler this week, I believe. Or no, that might not be the case. He's second behind Tyler in terms of the 9s or above ratings. But yes, in terms of his fan favorite stuff, he jumps up here.
Yeah, and that's a huge leap to go from like 4-ish for a long time up to 10.
Yeah. So interesting stuff there. We are then going to head into week 9, where Angela is going to win the HOH, and this is when things start to slow down a little bit. But there's still a lot that we have to talk about here with JC, especially for this week. So Tangela is going to be getting closer, and that's not what JC wants.
He starts to get a lot more, tunnel vision about the Tangela problem.
Well, because his game relies so heavily on Tyler, and in his mind, if Tyler is starting to go off with Angela, that's bad for him. We know that Tyler has never been truly loyal to JC, but JC feels like it's just now happening, and so the reason why JC hasn't been getting the 9s and 9 and 10 ratings that he assumes that he should be getting all season long is because we know that Tyler is more loyal to level 6 than to him, and he's now just starting to find out, wait a minute, my game is going from a 9 or a 10 to a 6 or a 7, because if Tyler is loyal to Angela, then I'm screwed. And of course, there's also the jealousy angle that we have touched upon throughout this podcast. So with Angela as HOH, he does need to, again, he focuses most on keeping himself safe at all costs. He needs to avoid the block. So in order to do that, he makes sure that he convinces Angela to put Fessy and Haleigh both on the block. She cannot nominate Sam because if if Fessy is off the block or if Haleigh is off the block and then they win the veto and take the other one off the block, then it will come down. He knows that he would be the replacement nominee. It would be him versus Sam, and he does not want to be up against Sam right now. That is way too dangerous for him. So he's actually going to do the bulk of the work convincing Angela to make this move. Obviously, Tyler wanted her to make it as well, and he was doing some subtle work to make that happen. But JC is going to do the bulk of this and make Angela feel okay with making this move, and then Tyler's going to come in and finish the job afterward, and make sure that Fessy and Haleigh both go up.
Yeah, and JC really reaffirms himself with the level 6 people this week. You know, they're concerned because he has been close with Fessy this entire game, and he says, no, I've been in this for the team the entire time. I've been loyal to you. I was working with Faysal to benefit you guys. Like, I can't wait to vote Fessy out as soon as he hits the block. And he really tries to push, you know, I've been loyal to you guys from day one to try and insulate himself.
Yes, and so this is when... there's a lot to talk about this week because JC is going to decide to let Fessy go. And I think this is his first real tactical error in the game. And he does have some halfway decent reasons for doing it, but they're, of course, all misguided. So first of all, as you're saying, he is putting a lot of work in to level 6 to make sure that they feel his loyalty. He lays as much guilt trip on them as possible, and it actually works to some degree. Guilt tripping very, very rarely works in the house, but when people are so far in power and they feel like you're just not even close to a threat, it can work a little bit, I guess. He says, you know, I've been so loyal to you guys. I've put in so much work for you guys. I feel like I'm not as close to you guys. And they feel genuinely bad for him. And he also says, you know, I'm willing to let Fessy go for you guys. And that's part of it. But I think the reason ultimately that he's willing to let Fessy go is because he is starting to reevaluate his endgame plans. First of all, at this point, him and Tyler have been talking about, okay, let's take Kaycee and Angela to the final 4. Then we'll cut Angela. We'll take Kaycee to the final 3. Then we'll be solid because Kaycee can't win anything. And so at this point, he's thinking Tyler's way too close to Angela. This is not good. Tyler's clearly going to cut Kaycee first and then take Angela to the final 2. I can't have that. This is not a good final 4 situation for me. I need to change it, and I need to come up with a compelling argument for why Tyler should be okay with changing it. So what he sees is that he was able to flip Haleigh back over the week before. Haleigh's looking like a more valuable pawn for him. And Haleigh hates Sam, and Sam hates Haleigh, and Sam's a bad competitor too. So JC comes up with this plan. Okay, all right, we can't go to the end with Angela and Kaycee anymore. Let's instead go to the end with Haleigh and Sam. They hate each other. They'll never take each other. We should be keeping these people in the game. They're bad at competitions. If we're in the final 4 with Haleigh and Sam, then we should have this pretty much on lock. We take Sam to the final 3. He feels like this is a good, compelling argument, and that Tyler should be able to recognize that. And that's why Fessy needs to go this week, because he needs Haleigh in the game because she hates Sam so much, and that's the compelling way that he can make this work moving forward.
Yeah, and he really tries to push to Tyler. You know, Kaycee and Angela are a very strong pair. They will always have each other's backs. We need to break them up. We cannot take them together. And this is, again, his major short sight in the game, is that he thinks that he will be able to convince Tyler to go against these people that Tyler has been working with since day one. He does not see how committed Tyler has been to level 6 this entire time, that he has been in the middle, more so by himself. He thinks he's had this partner in crime the entire time, and he still thinks that is the case at this point, and is trying to convince Tyler to go against Kaycee and Angela.
Yes, and basically he is looking at this, he's thinking long term, and he's trying to look at this from a perspective of, how can I get Tyler and myself to the end in the right way where we are in a position to win. And in order to make that happen with Tyler, he needs to let go of Fessy. What he doesn't realize is that he needs to be working against Tyler at this point. And if he had recognized that, I do think he might have been able to flip level 6 into keeping Fessy around. I don't think they were particularly motivated one way or the other to let Fessy go. In fact, Brett was the person that wanted Fessy to go the most, and Brett is the person that Jaycee had the most amount of influence on at this point in time. So this, I think, again, is going to be his first real major tactical error in the game in terms of his end game plans, and it largely comes from the fact that he trusts Tyler too much. He is not prepared to work against Tyler at this point.
Yeah, and he continues to bring up the plan to Tyler. It's not just, one and done. He is persistent in trying to get this narrative out there that they need to break up Kaycee and Angela. And though that is, kind of effective with Brett, they're really circling to the idea of we need to break up these close pairs with people with strong bonds, and we need to keep the people who won't work together. And he spends so much time pushing this to Tyler, and it really is really bad for him that he doesn't see where Tyler is.
And so he's going to spend a lot of time on Brett now, too. Now that Fessy is going to be leaving, he knows that he needs to really, this is now or never. He needs to create some cracks in level 6, one of the most cohesive and loyal alliances in the history of Big Brother up until this point. And he is able to actually succeed. He manages to convince Brett to turn on level 6. He, first of all of the groundwork that he's been putting in for the last 2 weeks, now talking about Tangela, trying to use Brett to split them up, trying to tell Brett to flirt with Angela, cockblock Tyler, all of these things. And he finally is able to convince Brett it's time to turn. And it's obvious that she has a final two with Kaycee. We need to split Kaycee and Angela up. So Brett says, fine. Yeah, we need to do this. I agree. They're going to pretend to be on board with the plan to evict Haleigh next, but at the first opportunity, they're going to take their shot. They're going to make the strike. He does make sure, although, again, to protect Tyler in all of these schemes. Tyler's the one we can work with. After we split Angela and Kaycee up, we can reel Tyler in. And so he's also going to miscalculate a little bit, thinking that Haleigh is more likely to work with him and Brett. And again, this is one of the reasons why he's willing to let Fessy go. He feels like they're both willing to work with him and Brett. He thinks that Brett's connection with Haleigh is good. He thinks that his connection with Haleigh is good and that he can work with Haleigh. He feels like Haley's more likely to work with them than go to the women. But of course, she is going to end up going to those women. Not that it ends up mattering at all anyway, but it is a miscalculation. And he's also going to let Tyler in on this plan, which is also going to be probably the bigger mistake.
Yeah. No matter what mistake he makes, it all goes back to the big mistake of trusting Tyler too much. But he does definitely see himself as having more influence over Haleigh than he does. I think because he had so much success influencing her, the week before. He was able to convince Haleigh that Scottie had to go. So he feels like, okay, well, I could probably convince Haleigh of anything. Yeah.
And I also think that, he's looking at it from the perspective of why in the world would Haleigh not want to work with us, and why would she want to work with Tyler and the this obvious trio? It's because it's Haleigh that we're talking about. That's why.
She could have been so.
So Jaycee's jealousy of Angela is really starting to piss Angela off, but once again, Tyler and Brett are there to deflect and protect Jaycee from Angela. Fessy is going to be evicted by a vote of 4-1. Jaycee did spend some time during the week to prep Fessy for the jury, to make sure that he had Fessy's jury vote. So Fessy's going to leave. He doesn't feel great about Jaycee, but Jaycee's his buddy. He's definitely willing to vote for Jaycee over anyone other than Haleigh. So that's that's a jury vote that he has in the bag. Jaycee's average rating this week is a 7.25. It's dropped just slightly because he's still doing some good work here, and he's still in a decent position, but he's still got a long way ahead of him before he can truly shine.
Yes, this is when we had such high hopes. It looked like there was going to be, the big crack in level 6. It looked like Jaycee was going to be a major player between Brett breaking away from there, and then the battle bag happened. So
Yes.
Thanks, Battleback.
Yeah. So the battle back is going to happen, and this is going to be very bad for JC's game. Scottie is the one that returns. Scottie, his arch nemesis, his biggest enemy from his biggest adversary in the game thus far. And not only that, but Fessy goes and outs JC's part in Scottie's eviction to Scottie in the short time that he's out there. So not only is Scottie coming back thinking JC's the best player, he's the person I was trying to get out before, and he's also now just found out that JC is the one that lied and got him evicted when he left. And so JC is, of course, not happy about this.
No, JC is absolutely livid about the battle back in general, about Scottie being the one to come back. And it's also really bad for JC from a jury vote perspective, because I feel like Scottie left feeling good about JC as a player, not feeling good about him as a person and for him personally, but he would have been quite willing to vote for JC, and more time actually interacting with JC, honestly, could only be a bad thing for him at this point.
Yes. So heading into week 10 here, Tyler wins HOH, and JC, being forced to deal with this ghost from his past, has to backpedal and tell Tyler, okay, forget Haleigh, forget Angela. We need to focus on Scottie this week. And unfortunately, because he's putting these Angela plans on hold, he's also recognizing that this is going to give Brett a lot of time to reconsider, a lot of time to end up fessing up to this plan. So he's going to reveal even more of what Brett has been talking about, even more of their plans, and giving Tyler a lot more time to see this coming and to cut it off before it can go anywhere.
Yes, he reaffirms to Tyler that the Kaycee Angela thing, we can't even look at it right now because of the battle back. We need to worry about having the numbers. We need to get Scottie out before we can even look at doing anything else.
Yes. And so Tangela is going to grow even closer this week. JC is going to become increasingly frustrated. He confronts Tyler several times. 451, I checked. I heard her run to the couch.
She was breathing heavy. I'm not stupid, okay?
Yes. Brett is going to continue to vouch for him within level 6, though. His connection to Brett is going to really save him when it comes to the final 5 decision, which we'll talk about later. JC is going to talk to Scottie toward the end of the week, and he's kind of realizing Haleigh's been spending all of her time with Angela and Kaycee, and then he has a talk with Scottie where they really clear the air. JC ends up convincing Scottie that, look, it wasn't me. Fessy, he was just covering for Haleigh when he told you that it was my fault. It wasn't me. Scottie appears to genuinely believe this, and it seems like they might be able to work together moving forward. And so JC decides, you know what? Haleigh, she's gone off to the women. Scottie's a better competitor. If he's willing to work with Brett and myself, then maybe we should keep Scottie around.
Yeah, and he's just constantly trying to find some way that he can go back to the plan that he had been solidifying the week before. He just is so frustrated with the Tangela situation. He wants Angela out. He needs to bring Tyler back in, and he's again willing to just throw anything at the wall and see what will stick to protect himself.
And I feel like this was another missed opportunity. Hard to blame JC as much for this one. He really wants to make this happen. However, once again, the main weakness here is that he goes to Tyler to try to get Tyler on board with this. Tyler says, no, you cannot keep Scottie in the game. And JC is going to kind of lose the nerve here. He would really like to keep Scottie in the game, but it's too much of a risk from his perspective, because Scottie it's just too little too late. He doesn't know if he can trust Scottie. He doesn't, it's kind of miraculous that he was able to convince Scottie that he wasn't the cause of all of his problems in that one conversation. Scottie could just be telling him what he wants to hear. Scottie still won't name his targets, and there's just not enough time to lay the groundwork to make sure he can trust Scottie enough that it's worth the risk to go against Tyler. And believe me, JC definitely is willing to go against Tyler here if that's what is necessary, but when he does the calculation here, he tells Brett, it's just not worth it. I wish we could do this, but we just can't trust Scottie enough. It's too little too late.
Yeah, and it's again, he really needs something that he feels very sure about in order to go against Tyler here. Because again, in JC's mind, it has been him and Tyler against the house this entire time. And it is going to take something big to get him to actually really go against Tyler.
Yes. So he ultimately backs off of this decision. And again, probably a missed opportunity here. Scottie would have been a better asset moving forward. And if he hadn't trusted Tyler as much, I think he absolutely would have made this move. And him, Scottie, and Brett could have made some kind of push. They would have at the very least had a slightly better shot moving forward, but does not happen. So he starts trying to prime Haleigh for the plan to flip the game around, hoping that one of them can win the HOH, her, Brett, or himself. And Scottie is going to be evicted unanimously for the second time. And unfortunately for JC, this time Scottie leaves feeling like, you know what? I was wrong. JC is not a good player. JC was too successful in convincing Scottie that he had nothing to do with Scottie's eviction. So Scottie's going to leave thinking, JC, turns out he's not very good. He had nothing to do with it. Instead, he's just this coward that goes along with what the HOH wants because Tyler didn't want me to stay, so I didn't stay. And it leaves a bad taste in Scottie's mouth. So the one real good solid vote that JC might have had ends up losing it because of this battle back.
Yeah, the battle back ruined so many things this season. Truly, I feel a lot of resentment towards the battle back. And this is just another one of those things. And so when JC's talking to Haleigh, he's like, you need to go after people who haven't gone after you in this game. That's me and Brett. Like, we have to work together since you're staying. We need to, split up Kaycee and Angela. And he's really hoping to get Haleigh on board with him and Brett.
Yes. So JC's average rating this week has fallen to a 6.5. This battle back was not good for him. However, he still has a shot here. As long as the competitions can break the right way, he still has a shot. And of course, the average favorite player percentage is going to drop considerably this week. At week 10 from a high of 10.7% to one of the lows here, 3.2%. This is the double, really the triple whammy. Basically, he is going to touch Tyler during his sleep. He is going to pull the prank on Haleigh with the bathroom door, and I honestly think most damning was the fake video of him saying the N-word, which really just spread around and was like the nail in the coffin, even though it wasn't real.
Yeah, well, and it's the thing, like, JC did so much problematic stuff in the house, and it's kind of funny that the thing that damaged his reputation the most was when he actually wasn't being problematic. It's like, ooh, tough luck. But yeah, he did not have a great week in those BB streets on Twitter. Not at all.
No. So we head into week 11. Kaycee is going to win this HOH by less than a second. So close. JC is going to really, really be annoyed that, came so close. An entirely different game if Brett wins this HOH. But he does not. Brett is going to continue to vouch for JC, making sure he stays off the block, while in the meantime, JC throws Brett under the bus to make sure that if something happens with the veto, that he will stay off the block. He's self-preservation. JC is going to make sure that Brett is the one that goes before him, and if Brett can't win the next HOH, then maybe Brett will go ahead of him anyway. So really just making sure that, again, he's covered on as many angles as possible.
Yeah, he doing whatever it takes to prevent going on the block, because as long as he is on the block, he still has a chance to talk his way out of situations. JC's main priority this entire game is keeping himself off of the block.
Yes, JC and Brett are going to continue to scheme against Angela, and Tyler, toward the end of the week, is going to pretend to be on board with their plans.
Yeah, so this is again JC, believing and trusting Tyler really to his detriment. Tyler using that opportunity to turn the plan on its head to get level 6 on board with getting rid of Brett, which really takes out a lot of JC's opportunities in the game.
Yes. So Haleigh is going to be evicted unanimously, and Haleigh leaves feeling pretty fine about JC. She's kind of rooting for him. He's the underdog, and she would love to see him make it to the end, and she'd be totally willing to vote for him.
It's hard. Well, you can't trust anything Haleigh says, which is the hard part. So I really don't know that Haleigh would ever actually consider voting for JC. I'm really not sure about it. But again, we have no way of knowing her motivations because the only opportunity we have to see how people genuinely feel is in the diary room, and we've seen that her diary rooms are not representative. So does she feel good?
According to the method that we've used to track everyone so far, she felt pretty good about him. So I think that's all we can really say.
Fine, okay.
JC's average rating this week falls down to a 5.25. Not looking great for JC at this point. Brett really needed to win that. He still has a chance, though. We said this is the precipice. Things are going to either go back up for JC or they're going to fall all the way down here into not great places.
So, yeah, it's where we thought, okay, this is building, something's going to happen. And at this point, something has to happen or else he is in dire straits.
So then we get to week 11, part 2. Double eviction. Tyler wins the HOH of the double eviction, and JC's world is about to come crashing down as JC finally touches the block for the first time all season. And he's going to go up next to Sam. Angela's going to win the veto. JC is going to be taken down, replaced by Brett. Brett is going to be evicted unanimously, and things are not looking great for JC. Brett is going to leave feeling a bit hurt that JC voted him out, but is definitely rooting for him to make it to the end. Definitely willing to give JC his vote. JC really like embodying the underdog status here, really gaining momentum in terms of jury support.
Yes, absolutely. And he is feeling so betrayed by Tyler in this moment. This is, the realization that, well, we've been together this whole game, but obviously there's more going on. He feels so hurt and bothered by this, and he really tries to guilt Tyler about what he did because he doesn't have anywhere else to go at this point. There's literally nobody else that he can work with to try and split anything up.
Yes, it's at this point that JC realizes that his whole game, or at least up until the point where Tyler got with Angela because he didn't know that it was bad from the start, has gone off on the wrong trajectory, and he has a very tough road ahead of him if he wants to survive. He's really like, oh crap, I made a wrong move somewhere along the line, and it had a lot to do with Tyler. This is not good. A decent amount of self-awareness here, but of course he's not completely aware of everything. We head into week 12. Angela's going to win the HOH. She is going to nominate JC and Sam. But JC is not the target. All that work with Brett, all that guilt tripping, it's successful. And, they're going to make sure they target Sam over JC. And that's pretty huge for him.
Yeah, and this goes back to there's so many conversations that have happened over the course of the season and in this week where they're like, yeah, but like JC's the one we need to bring down with us. He, we love him so much. Oh, like let's just bring him with us. And though it didn't end up being to the 5 with Brett, as those conversations had been, it does manage to keep him safe over Sam. Yeah,
and this is again a credit to how much work he was doing throughout the entire game to make sure he stayed safe. You'd think that JC would be an easy boot over Sam. A lot of people were confused who hadn't been watching the feeds. Why is JC staying over Sam? It doesn't make any sense, and it's impossible to explain in just 1 week. It's really the culmination of his active gameplay style throughout the entire season of constantly doing everything he can to keep himself safe in as many circumstances as possible. And that's what keeps him alive through the final 5, when really Sam is the obvious choice to bring forward.
Yeah, exactly. He has insulated himself very well with level 6, especially when he did get caught and kind of threw his lot totally in with them. That really helped him to go, especially because Sam is erratic in a different way, right? And it's always interesting to get rid of the person where you don't know what they're going to do, right? And
Yes.
they also, Sam has won a competition and JC hasn't, and that also helps that they think they will definitely be able to beat JC in the final 4.
Yes. JC is going to try to convince Tyler to evict Kaycee if the veto plays out the right way, but he's, of course, unable to persuade him. So JC, he's not giving up. He spends the week trying to make a bond with Kaycee now. Brett's gone. He's recognizing that Tyler's not who he thought he was, and so he's trying to make a new big dumb puppet. He's trying to get with Kaycee using the LGBT connection, telling Kaycee that if he wins the HOH next week, he'll be keeping her safe. That, you know, him and her to the end. He's recognizing this is the move he has to make if he wants any chance of moving forward. At this point, he's drawing dead in terms of strategic social connections. He has completely run out of runway, but he's still out there doing everything he can, trying to make this work.
Yes, JC is not someone who is going to lay down and die. He does not want to give up.
Yes, Sam is going to be evicted in a unanimous vote. She leaves with nothing bad to say about anyone in the house, except maybe Angela. And she's certainly not particularly likely to give JC her vote, but she's not necessarily super anti-JC at this point. She nothing bad to say about.
Yeah, I mean, they were best friends at one point, and so it's not impossible to consider a world where Sam would vote for JC.
Yes. JC's average rating this week falls down to a 4. Things are not looking good for him. He has finally run out of runway. There's nowhere else for him to go but to win a competition. And in week 13, or whatever you want to call it, JC wins his first competition. He wins the final 4 HOH. It's a must-win competition, the first must-win competition of the season for JC, and he wins it. His objective is to evict Angela this week, hoping that he's been working on Kaycee. He's still got something with Tyler, hoping that he can maybe convince one of them to take him to the end. Obviously, that's all for naught, but it's still his objective here. He ends up nominating Tyler and Angela, fulfilling his promise from week 8. And after Kaycee wins the veto, she's going to send Angela home. And Angela goes home not feeling great about JC. There's no chance that JC gets Angela's vote over Kaycee or Tyler.
No, absolutely not. And he feels that he does have the LGBT connection with Kaycee. He might be able to manipulate her based on that. And then he does feel that with Angela gone, he might be able to reel Tyler back in to be that dynamic duo that he feels they have been since day one. So he feels the best about getting rid of Angela, and he does get what he wants. But yes. I don't know that was necessarily the right call there. And I don't know. I mean, it was not the right call there.
Yeah. Well, he's completely out of options here. He needs to win.
Nowhere to maneuver besides winning.
Yes. And then Tyler is going to win part 1 of the final 3 HOH. So he is now in a must-win spot for part 2. JC is going to still attempt. He's still trying, as we mentioned at the top of this podcast. It seems like years ago. He's been trying as hard as possible to play Tyler and Kaycee off of each other, telling them both that he'll take them to the final 2. Of course, unbeknownst to him, they've had a final 2 from the start. They have his game completely clocked. He enters part 2 of the final HOH in a must-win spot, and within a gap of less than 40 seconds, he loses part 2 of the final 3 HOH, and that is probably it for JC. With Tyler and Kaycee heading to part 3 of the final 3 HOH, they should be taking each other. JC should be evicted here at the number 3 spot, and that could be it with 40 seconds difference, and JC might be our winner of Big Brother 20, but instead looking like he is probably going to be evicted in 3rd place.
Yeah, not a lot would have had to have gone differently for him to be in a much stronger position going into finale night. But I really don't see the situation where he ends up in the final two here.
Yes, less than a second with the Brett competition, less than 40 seconds with part two. It really was a close thing. So really just to recap JC's game, from my perspective here, he enters the game, immediately bonds with Tyler. They create this final two. They plan to play the house against each other. They're hiding their bond, and he goes through the game. He's easily the most active player. He's managing to play both sides successfully for longer than anyone in the house, including Tyler and Brett. Every single week, he's actively checking in with every player in the game, providing incentives for them to act in ways that benefit him. His success rate is hit or miss here, but with the support of the main bonds that he creates, Tyler, Fessy, and then Brett, it's mostly enough to get his way almost every week, keep him just barely out of the hot seat throughout the entire season. He ends up finally getting caught in a big way in week 7, pulls himself out of the fire with one of the most impressive moves of the season there in week 8, but the main fault comes as his trust in Tyler. Tyler is his weakness in the game. A lot of people say that the problem is that he didn't know about level 6, that he was secretly working for an alliance that was too loyal to each other. I don't think that's really the case. JC knew about level 6. He didn't know it was called level 6, but he knew that they were an alliance and he knew that they were working together. The problem is that he thought Tyler was more loyal to him than to level 6. He didn't realize that Tyler was actually more loyal to level 6 than to him. And so from JC's perspective, if Tyler is more loyal to him than to level 6, then all of his plans work out perfectly. JC was successful in his attempt to pivot and crack level 6 wide open. He got Brett to betray them. But the competitions did not break his way, which finally left him in a place where he had no more options. And despite this, he did manage to win that vital competition. He's still trying his best. He's still in a position where just 40 seconds away, and he might have been able to still be in this with a shot, despite the fault. But really, it all comes down to Tyler being the thing that is in his way, both the thing that helped him get there and also the thing in his way of the final two and the potential win.
Yeah, and it's honestly not working with Tyler definitely would have been to JC's detriment at the same time. Like if he had been a threat to Tyler, he would have been taken out earlier than this. So he really didn't have that much of an option to maneuver, especially given how disconnected and non-cohesive or whatever that Faute was. A lot of the season is also determined by, one side is cohesive and the other side is just a complete and utter mess. And JC really couldn't have tied himself to that side and gotten as far because they just didn't have it in them to work well together.
Yeah, basically there are a couple of key moments where he might have been able to increase his odds, but he didn't, because he didn't see the board for what it was, which was that Tyler was not as loyal to him. But even so, it was still odds. He still needed some competitions to break his way. And JC came into this game with a significant disadvantage. He can't win almost any of these competitions on his own. He needs other people to do it for him. And he also has a major language barrier that's going to not only be a hindrance in the competitions, but also socially. And despite that, he did manage to get as far as he did. And, this significant disadvantage of not being able to win the competitions he needed to give him just a little bit more competition ability. And he is in a much better spot. So there were, again, a couple moments, I think, keeping Scottie would have been helpful. Keeping Fessy would have been helpful because he needed them to win competitions for him. But ultimately, it still would have come down to he needed somebody to win one of those competitions in the stretch of over 10 competitions in a row that Angela, Kaycee, and Tyler won. And it just didn't happen for him. Despite that, he still came very close, but close is not good enough in Big Brother.
Unfortunately not. But, no one thought that JC had this in him going into it. And I think that there is a lot to be, studied from here and a lot to learn for anyone else going into the game in the future.
All right. So that's what we've got for JC's game. Any other things that you wanted to mention here?
You know what? I think we've covered pretty much everything very well.
Yes. JC, so just a couple more stats. JC, for the most part, was consistently above almost every member of Faute throughout the entire season in terms of ratings. He was behind Tyler for the entire season, tied Tyler once in week 3, and mostly behind Kaycee throughout the season as well, as she, obviously Tyler was more loyal to her, so she was consistently in there with a better shot, although perhaps underrated considering how close he may have just come to winning the whole game. But there you go. JC's game, like I said, probably the most active game that I have done a whole season recap for, and that includes Paul last season. JC, it was all over the place. Not always successful, but always entertaining.
Yes, I truly feel like I was back in school yesterday as I was going through everything. I was like, oh my God, like, what is happening? It's too much. Should we also be talking about who we think JC would vote for, or will that be covered in the other 2 deep dives, do you think?
I mean, we'll probably cover it in the other ones, but it's worth talking about, for the most part. I mean, for me, I do feel like if Tyler cuts JC will vote for Kaycee, and I feel like if Kaycee cuts JC, he'll vote for Tyler.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to go for whoever doesn't cut him.
I think, yeah. However, there could be, if they decide to tell him that they're cutting him beforehand, then that could shake things up a bit, because it gives them some time to dwell, to like get over it, come to terms with it, and Tyler might be able to talk him into voting for him with some more time on his hands.
Yeah, that's really the only thing to look out for in these next couple of days before the feeds go down for the finale is what conversations are Tyler and JC going to have, what conversations are Kaycee and JC going to have, and are they going to be able to kind of prime JC for going home and being open to voting for Tyler, who he feels he's worked with the entire season.
Yes. All right. So that's a wrap on JC's Big Brother 20 game. We will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, where we will update you on everything that happens today on the live feeds, and we will be going over the next person's game. I'm actually not entirely sure who it's going to be yet. So look out for that. It's going to be either Tyler or Kaycee, that's for sure. One of them is going to be a lot easier than the other, so that may have some influence. But we will be recapping one of the next final of the final 3, and we will go into some detail about their games. Should be even more interesting because it's looking like they're going to be the final 2. So going to have a little more relevance, even though maybe not quite as exciting a game.
Yeah, it may not be as interesting, but it is definitely more relevant.
All right. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Kirsten's at Kirsten Said What. I'm at Armstrong Taran. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye, guys.